The saga began with a cruel whim from the gods of this cosmos. They decreed a grand tournament for all planets, every single one home to intelligent life. The stage was set for universal battle royale. Worlds that were defeated would be utterly annihilated from existence. Our protagonist carries the name Jihan. He was blessed with an SSS-ranked martial art of divine origin. However, he could not yet unleash its true cataclysmic power. The rest of humanity proved far too feeble. They fell in a desperate war against the Orcish hordes. Our hero was the sole survivor, but Earth was still doomed. The erasure sequence commenced, and the planet itself began to dissolve. Only Jihan withstood the deletion, his unique skill defying the very gods. This impossible feat captured the Celestials' undivided attention. They decided to grant him a singular opportunity, a second life, a chance to truly awaken the god-tier potential slumbering within. Furthermore, they bestowed upon him a glitched-out system. It enabled him to ascend levels at a speed others couldn't fathom. He was also granted entry to a hidden achievement market, a place to purchase legendary artifacts. He could acquire new powers with the points he accumulated. When Jihan's consciousness flickered back to life, the distant, echoing voices from television were the first sounds he heard. He slowly stirred, his mind racing to piece together the fractured memories. The very last thing he could recall was a system message, a promise. He would be regressed to the dawn of the League's inception era. He took a disoriented moment to survey his new reality, and he knew with absolute certainty exactly where he had returned. He was on the rooftop of the building he once called home. Back in the year 2020, within South Korea, there were no ravenous beasts tearing through the city streets. No life or death survival games had yet begun, and children were even playing, trying to emulate the legendary Sword King. The hero, Yoon Sejin. Jihan understood then that he had truly been thrown back to an age of peace. Without any warning, just to be certain, he summoned his status window, praying his powers hadn't been wiped clean. He had been reverted all the way back to level 2. This confirmed his impossible return to the past, to the exact moment he first stepped into the League. He couldn't fathom what was truly transpiring, but this was the ultimate golden opportunity for him. If he could wield the forbidden knowledge from his past life, then there was a sliver of a chance he could reshape destiny. And reshape it he must to become a shield for everyone this time. Armed with the foreknowledge of the world's end, he would ensure that everything would be rewritten. In this timeline, back in the year 2020, Korea possessed an formidable international stand, and they boasted a champion who dominated the power rankings. Among the planet's most elite players, 11 were recognized as the absolute apex predators. And within this godlike pantheon of 11, one warrior staunchly defended the third-place throne. He was a man of almost blindingly brilliant power, who could annihilate a dozen elite players with a single sword swing. That man was the Sword King, Yoon Sejin. And he was the sole reason Korea maintained its unshakable position as one of the mightiest nations across the entire globe. He was the pride and the national treasure of Korea. And because of his absolute dominance in the BattleNet, he had rightfully earned the title of the strongest warrior. And Korea was able to secure the highest rankings within all of Northeast Asia. At the very least, they were able to hold that honor until the fateful day that Jihan had been coincidentally reborn. On that specific day, Yoon Sejong made a public declaration that he was casting aside his name for Rihai and was naturalizing as a full citizen of Japan. It should have been just another ordinary day in July of 2020. But on that day, the Korean BattleNet was rocked by the greatest betrayal in its history. Jihan always despised the very sight of the man who effectively sent Korea spiraling into oblivion after Yoon Sejin's departure. Korea descended into a maelstrom of chaos. They plummeted from their high perch in the BattleNet rankings, suffering one humiliating defeat after another. And in the end, they free fell through the league standings at a terrifying velocity. The people blindly believed there wouldn't be a catastrophic shift in the rankings, and they deluded themselves that there were still plenty of brilliant and hopeful young talents left in the nation. Talents who could help Korea barely cling to the top 20. With that kind of pathetic defeatist thinking, it is no surprise they were so spectacularly crushed. No one rose up to fill the void left by Yoon Sejin's absence, and the situation only grew more desperate with time. Things may have been different if they had a little more time to prepare, but the BattleNet was a merciless, brutal machine. Once the True Space League began, the stakes became infinitely more dire. In the very beginning, the BattleNet was viewed as nothing more than a game, but the Space League transformed it into an apocalyptic war for survival. If a player lost their life within the game, then they would also perish in the real world. Monstrous abominations also materialized in nations that sank to the lower ranks, and a horrifying, one-sided slaughter would commence in those countries. After Yoon Se-jin's betrayal and Korea's fall to the bottom tiers, it was ultimately and completely annihilated. The few who managed to survive began to whisper and say that if only the Sword King had remained loyal, then Korea would have met a very different fate. That is how monumentally important the Sword King was. And to add the ultimate insult to injury, he is Jihan's own brother-in-law. To unleash his boiling rage, Jihan shatters a family portrait of Yoon Se-jin that was hanging in the main living room. Jihan still can't comprehend why his sister would love a traitor like Yoon Se-jin, and how different history would be if she was still among the living. Now that his bitter trip down memory lane has concluded, it's time to decide his course of action in the present. It's a miracle that he's returned to the past. But as of right now, his personal stats are absolutely pathetic. In his youth, long before the horrors of the Space League, he squandered all his time drinking and gambling his money away. He had absolutely no idea just how incredible his hidden gift was back then. A gift is a unique talent bestowed upon a player the moment they turn 18 years old. There is only a very small fraction of players who ever receive a gift. And since Jihan was unfortunate enough to get the lowest possible ranked gift, a lowly F rank, he used it to predict winners in betting games and made a living as a degenerate gambler. He never knew back then just how priceless his ability would ultimately become, since it's a skill that only reveals its true nature after it's awakened. But that aside for now, it doesn't alter the fact that his current stats are abysmal, and that these kinds of pitiful stats should belong to a level 1 rookie. However, during a night of drunken stupor, he accidentally chugged an entire experience potion, mistaking it for a bottle of booze, and that mistake caused him to level up. Strangely enough, though, he also possesses a wealth of achievement points. Aside from the fact they are worthless and can't be converted to cash, Jihan is absolutely certain that he accomplished nothing of note before he ever entered the league. So it's bizarre that he has this many points. It is highly likely that all these alterations have occurred because he was the one chosen to regress. For now, however, he decides to peer into his inventory, and a certain item in there immediately commands his attention. It is an achievement points exchange coupon. An item which grants special privileges to the final survivor, the one who chose to face the challenge once more. Clearly, this was an artifact created solely for him, an item of rank X, which means its rarity and usefulness are beyond measure. He activates it without a moment's hesitation, and the system materializes a brand new achievement store for him. This shop sells items that are completely exclusive to his use, and it can even be further upgraded with a specific quantity of achievement points. He will almost certainly gain more powerful options if he upgrades, and he must acquire something that he can put to use immediately. There are not a lot of options in the store, so he gives in to temptation and tries to upgrade. The level 2 expansion offers nothing of particular use, so he upgrades it again to level 3, and once more, it's not very helpful to him, with only 50,000 points remaining. If he dares to upgrade the shop to level 4, then he will be left with a paltry 10,000 points. The higher he elevates the shop's level, the more astronomically expensive it will become to upgrade again. So he is left with only 2 choices. He can either purchase all the mediocre items available to him now, or he can gamble it all and upgrade to level 4. He has always been a man who lives for the gamble, so the decision is clear. He upgrades his store to achievement level 4, and instantly, his reckless action pays off spectacularly. The next tier unlocks a miraculous item called Urgent Restoration. It grants him the power to repair other items, transforming them from a broken state to a perfect condition. Favorable outcomes like this are precisely why he can't ever stop gambling. How could he possibly quit when he continues to hit the jackpot again and again? Now that he's obtained this god-tier ability, it is time for the true demonstration of his powers. He journeys to a hidden room elsewhere within the enormous penthouse, and he uses his thumbprint to gain entry to a restricted area. It is Yoon Se-jin's private playing room, and Jihan is almost taken aback that the security system still recognizes him as a family member, even though the actual owner of this sanctum is no longer present. That aside, There is absolutely no reason for him to question a free gift like this. He opens the inventory of the BattleNet connector, and he discovers precisely the item he was searching for. It's an artifact named Dongfang Shua's Spoiled Brush, and it's a mere A-rank item that even the system describes as useless. But with a touch of assistance from his new Urgent Restoration tool, he is able to fix it, transforming it back into exactly what he desires. The A-rank Spoiled Brush is reborn as an SS rank item that holds a direct link to the martial god. Before he can even admire his own brilliant work, however, a new system notification appears, informing him that the tutorial for the Gangnam Bronze League is about to commence. There are only 10 seconds remaining before he's summoned to the arena, so Jihan has absolutely no time to spare. He calls forth his status window again, and he uses the divine brush to rewrite his own stats. The very reason he was able to ascend and become number 7 in the world during his previous life was due to a hidden ability that eventually led him to be called the Martial Saint. This unparalleled stat combines his strength, agility, and HP attributes into a single, cohesive whole, and it is known as martial power. The brush was discarded because it was seen as defective, but because of it, he can finally trigger his Grand Awakening. He finishes his writing just as the final countdown ends, and he is forcibly logged in and transported to the BattleNet League. The sole mission of this Bronze League tutorial is simple: survival, and the players are tasked to endure against the monsters of the Colosseum, alongside 100 other desperate players. Once only half of the players are left standing, the brutal survival game will conclude, and the victors will be declared. Jihan frantically checks his status window the second he is summoned, and he's relieved to see that, somehow, he managed to pull it off. He has successfully acquired martial power, and thanks to it, he has even earned 1,000 achievement points as a special reward. This is but the first step toward his ultimate ambition of obtaining the legendary Nameless Divine Art. But with just this single upgrade, he should effortlessly be able to dominate the entire Bronze League. The system also flashes a warning that he's connected to the BattleNet without using a connector. So because of this, he will experience 100% of all pain in the game. Jihan recalls this detail from before the Space League even began. During this early tutorial period, people could mitigate pain by purchasing expensive connectors. The specific one that his treacherous brother-in-law, Yun Sejin, used was a high-end model that negated pain by up to 99%. Jihan fully intends to make good use of that artifact later on, but for the time being, he must survive without it in this game. The achievement menu suddenly opens, and it presents him with a secret, limited-time quest. He is tasked to achieve the number 1 rank in this tutorial, and as a prize, he will be granted another 1,000 achievement points. This quest never existed in his previous timeline, but completing this new objective will be child's play for him, all thanks to the immense power of martial power. The survival game officially begins. And not even a single second after the announcement is made, an opponent lunges at him from behind with his sword drawn high. The opportunistic ambusher looks like he's trying to catch an unsuspecting newbie off guard and score himself a free and effortless kill. But he is stunned when Jihan effortlessly halts his attack with nothing more than 2 of his fingers. The man cannot even retrieve his sword, and Jihan turns to face him. Then, he mockingly thanks the man for being so generous as to gift him the coveted first kill. This is easily the most thrilling part of the game for him, and that is the freedom to mercilessly crush other people. Another massive thing in the world that completely shifted with the arrival of the BattleNet was the sudden creation of guilds. Guilds are massive organizations that scout, train, and manage players, and everyone across the globe became incredibly invested in the BattleNet. Because of this new reality, every country poured their national resources into fostering new players, and well-established corporations also began to aggressively invest in the growth of these players. This allowed numerous large and small guilds to be founded in South Korea. Thanks to these efforts, Korea was able to cultivate powerful players early on in the league. The Gangnam Bronze League, in particular, was a stage where the rising stars of every guild made their grand debut. In this specific Gangnam League showdown, an ambitious young player is summoned into the Colosseum, just like all the other participants, and he's fighting his hardest not to show his nervousness. This piece of potential cannon fodder is named Do Hyukyu, and he genuinely believes himself to be luckier than anyone else here. After all, he is a member of the Divergent Guild, which is run by the massive Divergent Group. This prestigious guild is famous for producing many rising stars, and this seemingly ordinary young man Du Hyukyu managed to join this impressive guild after he obtained the A-rank gift, Agility. Only a tiny minority of people could ever obtain an A-rank gift, and because of it, he's confident that he can break into the top 50. Now, his first step is to identify who his first opponent will be. His gaze sweeps across the arena, and all he sees are powerful knights, brutish-looking warriors, and terrifyingly monstrous creatures. Confronted with this intimidating roster, Du Hyukyu makes the very courageous choice to completely ignore them and turn his back as if he saw absolutely nothing. After all, simply staying alive is the most critical objective for survival, and the other players are staring at him as if they can practically smell his fear. If he gets eliminated from messing around right at the start, then that would be an utter and complete embarrassment. Scanning the field, most of the players appear to be from major guilds, and they're all wearing exceptional equipment. Being here doesn't even feel like he is in the Bronze League at all. Amidst the crowd, however, he spots someone that looks completely out of place among all of the other well-equipped rising stars. He is just wearing a simple wife-beater top, sweatpants, and he has no shoes or any equipment to speak of whatsoever. Du Hyukyu starts to wonder if this person even intended to participate in the Bronze League at all, or if he was summoned here by complete accident. He must be a total newbie that was summoned by a system error, which also means that he is a free. Easy kill. Hyukyu braces himself and prepares for the attack, while also praising whatever dumb luck he possesses for handing him such a simple kill right at the start of the game. The moment the system announces that the game has officially started, Hyukyu wastes not a single second and rushes in to land the killing blow on the completely unsuspecting newbie. Except, to his complete and utter shock, not only did the supposed newbie parry his attack, he blocked it with just 2 fingers. It makes absolutely no sense that someone who seems so pathetic could match his A-rank agility skill so effortlessly before he can even register what is happening. Jihan flings him away with barely a flick of his wrist, tossing him to the side as if he were completely weightless. Jihan taunts him for daring to join the Bronze League with a common gift as simple as agility. That enrages Hyukyu, who cannot stand that his A-rank gift is being insulted by someone who looks like a street beggar. Perhaps Jihan is just acting full of himself because he managed to block a single surprise attack. In that case, Hyukyu intends to teach him a harsh lesson by activating his top speed. It appears the player is planning to come at Jihan with everything he's got, and our MC is forced to admit that even his speed from earlier is not something that can be taken lightly. Hyukyu comes charging forward, aiming his blade directly for Jihan's neck, but our MC successfully manages to evade the strike, ducking down low just before the blade can connect. But the relentless assault is not yet over, and Hyukyu comes at him with another strike and another and another. Every one of his attacks is easily evaded, but that doesn't mean that Jihan is having an easy time. He's accustomed to fighting with much higher stats, but now his mind must recalibrate to being inside a level 2 player's body. Hyukyu isn't really all that fast. It's Jihan who is currently slow, which means this battle won't be as simple as he initially thought. However, even with that disadvantage, as someone who has survived countless life or death battles, the trajectory of this ambitious attacker is just far too simple and painfully obvious. Hyukyu comes in for another wide swing, and Jihan is done dodging. This time, he smacks the weapon right out of his opponent's hand, causing the sword to go spiraling up into the air. Then, before Hyukyu can even comprehend what just transpired, Jihan leaps high into the air, catching the sword and then plunging it down through his opponent's neck, finally ending this brief struggle. Hyukyu collapses to the floor, and as his body dissipates in defeat, he vows that the next time that he and Jihan cross paths, that he will be the one to emerge victorious. This causes Jihan to sigh, and it really puts into perspective how naive this world still is. Even in death, he's still thinking about his next fight. The system window pops up again and confirms that he has claimed the very first kill in the tutorial, and he is awarded 100 achievement points for the feat. The sword, unfortunately, vanishes since the player who owned it has perished. Our MC doesn't really need a sword, though, and now that he has finished a pretty decent warm-up, it is time for him to move on to his next battle. First, he needs to secure more than 5 kills to get a top position in this particular mission. As he suspected, though, no one is bothering with the monsters inside the battle net. Besides the other players, there are also monsters here. But one monster kill is worth only 1/10 of a player kill, meaning that a player would have to slay 10 monsters for a single player kill's worth of points to be counted. Because of this, most players avoided fighting the monsters completely, especially in this current scenario where the monsters are mobs like orcs. Targeting them would be a completely foolish move, but it seems that the system enjoys foolishness because it gives him yet another new quest: to slaughter all 30 orcs inside the Colosseum. Hunting down monsters is certainly inefficient, but he's being offered 500 achievement points as a reward, which is a full 5 times more than the reward he received for scoring the very first kill. If that is indeed the case, then there's no reason not to hunt the orcs. These basic NPC monsters are nothing compared to a real, battle-hardened orc anyway, so it shouldn't pose much of a challenge for him. Since there is nothing to hold him back now, he decides to go all out against the unsuspecting monsters. The orcs at first glance cannot believe their eyes that a nearly naked human is charging toward them at full, breakneck speed, but they quickly snap out of it and swarm together to try and kill him. The first 2 orcs that are closest hurl their axes at him, hoping to cut him down before he can even get near. But Jihan is able to snatch the axes with incredible ease, and then he hurls them straight back at them, killing multiple orcs with just a single returned hit that sends the rest of the horde into a berserk frenzy. But Jihan is already well on the move, dashing right past all of the charging beasts and appearing right in the very center of all of them. Then, with a single swing of the second axe, several Orcish heads go flying into the air. But our MC has not finished his work yet. He has only eliminated 5 of the orcs so far. They are now even more driven to take his life, but they are simply no match for our protagonist. He moves far faster than they can ever hope to track, and his immense battle experience is on full display here. Another orc lunges in, wielding a heavy spear, hell-bent on ending Jihan's life swiftly, but its weapon is effortlessly caught and then shattered, leaving the beast standing there confused and utterly bewildered as our MC moves in to cut him down with his axe. Except the axe shatters unexpectedly as he swings it at the orc. That moment fills the orcs with a newfound surge of confidence, and they believe that now his weapon is destroyed, they should have a much easier time in dealing with him. All of the orcs now charge at him in unison, and Jihan gives them credit for being so incredibly persistent. But no matter how desperately they try, he is just far too powerful for them to handle. He stomps down on the ground with 1 foot, sending all the orcs that were charging towards him flying backwards. Then he leaps high up into the air and grabs the weapons that went flying from the orcs' hands as they were thrown back, and in a single instant, he carves a path through the frenzied crowd, slaying even more of the orcs in the process. The brutal slaughter continues on, and more orcs continue to die until only 1 remains. The last orc is frozen with absolute terror, but at this very moment, he finally understands that Jihan is more of a monster than they are. As he has this realization, Jihan cuts him down as well, successfully completing his assigned quest. The system delivers the 500 achievement points that were promised, and he also managed to level up from the fight. Leveling up in the middle of a game is highly unusual, since experience is typically calculated at the end of the entire match. But this might be a special case because he is still at a low level, regardless of the actual reason. However, Jihan certainly isn't complaining about it, and he seizes the opportunity to level up his stats while he can. And if there is one single stat that he wants to give the highest priority to, it is martial power. Martial power merges 3 stats together, and even if other people were to level up one of those stats at a time, a single level invested in martial power is able to double your abilities, at the very minimum. There's also another reason why martial power is so special to Jihan, and that is because once he reaches level 30 in martial power, then he will have a chance to obtain the unnamed divine arts. If he ever wants to become stronger, then he must acquire the unnamed divine arts as quickly as possible. However, there exists a fatal flaw with this stat, and that's the fact that it is not at all easy to increase martial power. Ordinarily, you would need to acquire a wide assortment of battle experience and intense training in order to increase the martial power stat, and stat points can only increase the maximum potential growth rate. However, this time around, For some unknown reason, the martial power level actually rises. That is fantastic for him, and Jihan isn't entirely sure how this happened. But if it continues to grow like this, then his dream of becoming the strongest might actually be achievable. There is no time for him to be standing around. And this is still a bloody battlefield, after all, as he is reviewing his updated stats. A distant archer fires an arrow right at it, which he easily anticipates and manages to dodge. The archer is partnered up with a warrior clad in fancy-looking armor, and they are both clearly looking down upon Jihan. The woman tells her partner to wrap this up quickly, and the arrogant smiles on both their faces show that they believe they're going to handle him very easily. It's not at all unusual for two people to team up in a battle. This survival game is designed to be a PvP match, but there is no rule stating that participants cannot cooperate. The emblem on their gear also indicates that they are from one of the top 10 guilds in Korea, the infamous Turtle Guild. The main trouble with this particular matchup is the duo's pairing, a warrior and an archer. This is a potent combination of short and long-range attackers. The very fact that they are on the same team also means this will not be an easy fight for Jihan to win. By any stretch of the imagination, a new notification suddenly appears, informing him that there are now only 60 survivors remain, and the tutorial is rapidly approaching its end. So many people have been eliminated already, and with the match almost over, all Jihan has to do now is evade the attacks from the pair, and he should be able to survive until the very end. But if the two of them came to specifically target him, then he must look like a very easy target to them. As Jihan tries to figure out his strategy for these two, they are so overly confident in their own abilities that the warrior asks the archer out to dinner if he kills Jihan just before the battle truly starts. Jihan checks the scoreboard and confirms he is barely in first place, with a total of 4 kills. That means if he manages to kill these two, then it will solidify his #1 rank. To begin, he targets the long-range archer first, killing her while she is still in the middle of being flirted with by the warrior. With his martial power stat currently at a monstrous level 6, they stood absolutely no chance against him. The warrior is in total shock that his partner died so easily, but he doesn't even get a moment to process what has happened as Jihan blitzes up behind him and slashes at his back with his sword. Luckily for this arrogant warrior, his thick B-rank armor somehow managed to save his life, and he arrogantly thinks that Jihan won't be able to pierce through it with such a pathetic and poor quality weapon. But Jihan keeps attacking, using the sword to stab at the armor again and again, slowly creating a tiny hole in the exact same spot with his relentless strikes, until the gap is just wide enough for him to take out the knife. Elsewhere, in a dimly illuminated, high-tech office space, a woman observes a replay of the match with a cup of tea in her hand, right at the moment Jihan cuts down the warrior. This woman is Lee Hae-yeon, the 3rd Division, head of the Human Resources Department in the powerful Divergent Guild. She thinks to herself that it's a relief Jihan wasn't summoned. Directly next to her own prize bodyguard, Lim Gaeong, who was in the very same match as Jihan and managed to secure 2nd place. Gaeong is not at all thrilled about basically being told that she is weaker than this unknown person. But Hae-yeon still warns her to try and avoid clashing with the maniacal newbie. For now, what she needs Gaeong to do is to gather intelligence. However, as Gaeong studies the video playing on her boss's monitor, she cannot help but notice that she has definitely seen Jihan's face. Is renowned for one reason, commanding a god-tier S-rank gift. She is the prized ace upon whom the Divergent Guild has staked its very future. In her debut performance in the Bronze League was a spectacle that met the colossal hype. The #1 spot was destined to be hers, an outcome foretold by all, and indeed, she almost certainly would have, had a monster named Song Jihan not emerged from the shadows. Elsewhere, a scout from the Turtle Guild can only stare, his voice choked with disbelief. He realizes that not only had this unknown Jihan annihilated some of their most promising rising stars, but he had also seized the #1 rank at a mere level 2, with absolutely no proper equipment or allegiance to any faction. He appeared on the battlefield in a simple wife-beater and sweatpants, and impossibly reaped a harvest of 6 kills, armed with nothing. His incredible performance alone in this single match was enough to send shockwaves of questions rippling through the player communities of the world. The man at the epicenter of this chaos relaxes in his living room, coolly assessing the spoils of his victory. For conquering the summit of the Bronze League tutorial, he was granted a massive experience boost of 50%, and with that power, he catapulted from level 3 to level 6. His meteoric level up. Speed is almost certainly a perk of being at the rookie level, but it's a welcome advantage nonetheless. He acquired no GP, which is the standard currency of the system, but he did gain stat points from his rapid level up, which he poured directly into his martial power. Once again, his martial power surged, rocketing from level 6 to level 9. He also earned himself a new title, Tutorial Conqueror, a title that granted him an extra point in all his core attributes, as well as a staggering additional 20% experience boost. This powerful nickname only works within the Bronze League, but that is perfectly fine in its own way. With this new effect, he now possesses 10 points in martial power, which effectively makes him a god in the Bronze League. The coming Silver League. Promotion battle will be triggered once he reaches level 25. So until that day, he must focus solely on growing his power without pause. These were already an incredible number of boons to his stats and might, but there was still one more reward he gained from reaching level 5. He had unlocked his first class advancement, which meant that he could finally choose a class. When selecting a primary class, it's critical that the player understands what each path brings to the battlefield. There are 4 primary options: warrior, archer, mage, and support. In his former life, he had chosen the path of the warrior, and since he already possesses expert-level mastery of it, picking it again would make his path forward much simpler. But inside his unique achievement store, he can purchase an additional coveted class slot. With that item, even if he chooses a different path this time around, he can always add the warrior class to his arsenal later on, with a mere 10,000 achievement points. Thanks to this amazing boon, he doesn't need to select the warrior class first, and he has the freedom to try something new. His finger hovers over the glowing options as he contemplates which one will he claim as his own. And then, finally, he makes his choice. Sometime later, he is summoned once again to the Bronze League's Gangnam area for yet another high-stakes mission. This place is now swarming with thousands of zombies, a grotesque horde crowding every inch of space. And the mission objective this time is simple: defense. The zombie horde is at the base of castle, and the players must slaughter the zombies and defend the crystal that rests atop the towering castle battlements, while also trying desperately to survive against the undead legion. There are 10 towers in total, and the battle will rage on until only 5 towers remain standing. Atop one of these fortified towers stands Lim Gyeong, a warrior and ace of the Divergent Guild, and she stares down at the zombie horde with utter revulsion. They may be inside a game, but that doesn't make the sight of decaying corpses any less nauseating. Behind her, the other players begin to materialize, and they appear to be well acquainted with this map and the mission. Gyeong recognizes the other players who have been matched with her. One is an archer who belongs to the powerful LK group, and he is equipped with formidable B-grade gear. Another is a mage, and he appears to be unaffiliated with any guild, but his equipment is still quite impressive, and he doesn't seem too shabby for this low-level league. These two appear to be competent partners to fight alongside. But the most crucial player in this particular mission type is always the support. The defense mission is a battle of attrition, and the support class is the one who ensures that their team can outlast the enemy. He is summoned into the game last, and as the summoning light fades, Gyeong is shocked to see, just like the last time, his choice of gear is unique, and he is now sporting a tracksuit and wielding a metal pipe. Truly, the most powerful equipment available in the game. 20 minutes before he was summoned into this mission, he had made the fateful decision to choose the support class. As he confirmed his selection, the system itself warned him that this class was not at all compatible with him. The reason that he chose the support class, even though it is so horribly suited for him that the system itself had to double-check his decision, is because this class grants him a brand new ability called Divine Power. It is a special stat that is unlocked only after choosing the support class. Divine Power is something he absolutely must have if he hopes to develop another unique hidden stat, but it is one of the most difficult abilities to grow. That is because it's not as simple to boost with mere training like the other stats, and there is no other way to raise it aside from investing extra stat points. Jihan has no intention of doing that, of course, because he is pouring every single point he has into his martial power stat in the hopes of acquiring the nameless divine arts early. He would never squander his precious points on anything else. So then, Why did he choose the support class and obtain the divine power stat? That is because he is aware of another secret way to enhance divine power, and it is a forbidden method that most people are completely unaware of. The entire secret lies within his shiny new pot. The other players are just as bewildered by the fact that Jihan is a support as Guyong was, and the unaffiliated mage, in particular, does not bother to hide his absolute disgust with Jihan's attire and gear. He screams at Jihan for choosing not to acquire better equipment, and he even boasts about how expensive his own gear is by comparison, believing that Jihan's terrible gear is a sign of his incompetence. The archer attempts to de-escalate the situation before the mage says something that crosses a serious line, but the mage refuses to listen to any of it. He calls Jihan absolutely filthy, and even declares that he refuses to play with someone so terrible, who will certainly sabotage their entire team. Guyong closes her eyes, exasperated, and curses the terrible luck that has forced her into a squad, where she has to play with such a troll. However, she's snapped out of it when she hears the mage cry out in shock. Jihan has seized the arrogant mage by the collar of his expensive cape, and our MC is holding him up in the air like a child's toy. Then, without even a second thought, he hurls the mage over the edge of the tower, sending him plummeting straight down towards the hungry zombies below. The mage had been complaining this entire time that he didn't want to play the game with Jihan, so our MC simply helped him quit the game personally. The mage respawns after his unfortunate death, and the instant he reappears on top of the tower, he begs Jihan for his forgiveness and promises to do his very best for the team. The man currently groveling at our MC's feet is named Kim Gyu, and the reason for his abrupt change in personality is thanks to our MC's disciplinary methods. While a player enters the Bronze League defense mission, they are granted a grand total of 3 lives. Kim Gyuk, who was resurrected almost instantly after being mercilessly yeeted off the side of the tower, was immediately given another skydiving lesson by Jihan the moment he respawned. Because of that, he now has only a single life remaining, and if he were to die just one more time, then he would be ejected from the game and receive last place. That is why he is currently pleading for his life at the feet of our MC, hoping that he is not thrown down to become zombie food again. He must avoid getting last place, because if he does, then his player level will drop as a heavy penalty. That also means that all the expensive skills he bought with his own money will vanish from his skill tree as a consequence. If a user's level fails to meet the skill's requirements, then the skill is automatically and permanently deleted. Jihan is quite surprised that Gyuyuk's personality has shifted so dramatically, especially since he was so eager to unleash a flurry of attacks in his previous life the moment he spawned. Gyuyuk tries to sell himself as a powerful fire mage who is extremely effective against large mobs of undead, and he is also level 15. This means that he is a very strong asset for any other team. He's a precious resource that they wouldn't want to squander, but all of his pathetic groveling has jogged Guyong's memory of who he is. Kim Gyuyuk. He used to be affiliated with one of the 10 great guilds of Korea, and he was a well-respected player by all. But he failed 4 consecutive times in the silver promotion leagues. And after that, he just went around picking fights with others. In other words, Guyong now sees him as a complete loser. Gyuyuk continues to advertise his own skills, and he promises to cooperate fully with their team, but on a single condition. He demands that Jihan personally apologize for killing him twice. The archer is in agreement with this, and it is clear that he just wants their team to reconcile. But deep down, Gyuyuk is still seething with rage about being killed twice, but he's not even given a chance to finish his internal monologue of pathetic revenge, as Jihan grabs him by the collar one more time and flings him off the side of the castle walls one final time for the sheer, unmitigated audacity of demanding an apology, even though he was the one who instigated the fight. And with that final act, their mage is gone for good, leaving their team down by one crucial man. The zombies continue their relentless climb up the tower, and coincidentally, the team closest to them has another fire mage, who makes quick and easy work of the zombies on their side. That is precisely why they needed a mage. And the archer now scolds Jihan for not even trying to meet the arrogant mage halfway. Jihan is completely unfazed, and he opens up his status window to view his latest limited quest. This quest has a special linked quest, and it requires him to seize first place in the 10 Towers mission, and also to slay 1,000 zombies entirely on his own, for a grand total of 4,000 achievement points. Killing 1,000 zombies would be an almost impossible feat, considering how much little time they have remained. But he has no desire to lose out on 3,000 precious points. Lim Guyong observes as Jihan tries to formulate a new plan, and she does not even attempt to hide how much she's judging him. So far, Jihan has only done whatever he pleases, and despite his unbelievable combat specs, he is still just a mere support class, from what Guyong can currently tell. There is no logical reason for her to try and recruit him into Divergent. The archer is not nearly as composed as she is, however, and he continues to berate Jihan, who finally seems to notice him. Finally, he tells Jihan that if he is going to continue acting like a complete jerk, then he should just go ahead and fight this battle by himself. Unexpectedly, Jihan seems very pleased to hear that, since he will now be able to kill all the zombies by himself, if they allow him to go on ahead without their assistance. Guyong orders him to stay behind her while she takes the front line. She already considers this game a lost cause, but she at least feels a duty to take responsibility as a player. But Jihan simply tells her that it is quite alright. He plans to take on everything on the front line himself, while the archer and Guyong simply protect one another. A zombie finally manages to crest the top of the tower, and it is a vile blood zombie, which is a different and far stronger variant than the others. Its head is composed of liquid, so they cannot kill it using only physical attacks. Well, they supposedly can't anyway. Jihan has no regard for the supposed rules of the game. The zombie leaps forward, and Jihan readies himself with his metal pipe, and with one clean strike, he kills the zombie by completely smashing in its head. Guyong takes notice from the pieces of flaming zombie flesh that rain down around them, that Jihan must somehow have access to divine power. More zombies begin to make their way up the tower, and Jihan continues to fend them all off one by one with his pipe. So far, he has only killed 6 zombies out of 1,000, and he still has a very long way to go. As more and more zombies climb up the tower walls, Jihan continues to take them all on completely solo. As he slays over 24 of the zombies, he begins to realize that his greatest issue will be the blood zombies. Physical attacks are ineffective against them, so when he sees them coming, he releases a small burst of divine power, which allows him to obliterate them all in one go. The archer's entire perception of Jihan has completely changed, and it is impossible to deny that our MC truly is a pro, even if he is a bit of a jerk. Guyong, on the other hand, is too utterly stunned to speak and can only watch Jihan fight with complete awe. He is controlling divine power with absolute freedom, fighting without wasting any of it. His level of fine control is impressive enough on its own. But what astonishes her the most is Jihan's skill and surgical precision in aiming for the zombies' heads every single time, within a mere matter of minutes. Jihan has managed to slaughter over 200 zombies. This allows him to meet a hidden system condition called an Otherworld's Faith. This increases his divine power from level 6 up to level 7. This is his other secret method to increase his divine power, and it appears that it is working. He can increase his divine power through the use of sacred objects. Back in 2010, when Earth's tutorial first ever began, these sacred objects were traded for incredibly high prices, as it was rumored that they contained powerful secrets. But after a full decade, nothing was ever discovered, and eventually their value plummeted continuously. Otherworldly divine items also had no apparent merit, and a great many people did not even know of their existence. However, there was one single person who knew about it, and that was Sophia, the Saintess of America First. She had told him about how she increased her own divine power by using an otherworldly divine item, and divine power, in general, can be enhanced by using divine items from other worlds. Although the effect no longer works after finishing the tutorial, it was the very method that she used to become a saintess. She would hold onto the other world's divine item and pray for an incredibly long time. Eventually, after a long while of doing that, she would be granted divine power. The specific conditions required for each divine item are slightly different, and it is by no means an easy or simple method. On top of that, the items are in such low demand that they are extremely and incredibly difficult to find. Thanks to that fact, however, Sophia was able to completely monopolize all the divine items for herself. This is extremely high-quality information that no one else knows about. So she definitely used this to her own incredible advantage. But despite how priceless this secret information was, there's also someone else who was constantly purchasing these otherworldly divine items, which means that there is one other player who knows this secret. After Jihan had regressed, he visited his own sister's room in the Sword Palace penthouse, and there, he discovered all the otherworldly divine items that had been bought. All of their divine power has since been completely drained, so they're all completely empty. That means that the identity of the other player, who had been secretly collecting these otherworldly divine items, was none other than his elder sister, Song Jaya, along with Yun Sejin, the legendary Sword King. Jaya, his sister, was South Korea's greatest support class and a national hero. How she met her end is another story for another time entirely. Out of all the otherworldly divine powers that she had left behind, Jihan found a single steel pole, which has been degraded to an E-rank item. According to this item's official description, it should be especially perfect for smashing open zombie skulls. After having been used for so long, though, it has been reduced all the way to an F-rank item, and there's not much divine power left to absorb from it, but it is still incredibly tough. So is the perfect weapon for hitting things with. Guyong continues to marvel at his incredible physique and his almost unbelievable level of fine control. The archer then notices that another tower has just fallen, and their team was now in the top 5. But in his moment of excitement, he fails to see a zombie sneaking up on him. Guyong draws her own blade in a flash, and she cuts down the zombie before it can attack the archer. From her perfect stance and the way she wields her sword, Jihan immediately knows exactly who she is. She is known to the world as the Plum Blossom Sword, Lim Guyong, and she was famous for being the interim Sword King. However, she did not have a very happy ending in his past life. She died at the very hands of the former Sword King himself, who now goes by the name of Riahai. It seems that he has managed to meet a very important person very early on in this brand new life. Guyong calls for his attention and asks if she can join him in the fight. If they fight side by side, then they can aim for an even higher rank. Jihan takes a quick look at his status window, and he can see that their team is only in 5th place. There is still a long road ahead, and not very much time left either. If it's the legendary Plum Blossom Sword, then she will be perfectly fine without his help. But one of his quests is to seize 1st place in this mission. Jihan decides to leave the hordes of zombies, climbing up the tower to her and the grateful archer, and then he leaps off the side of the tower before they even have a chance to see what he is doing. As he plummets down to the ground, he gathers up all of his divine power into his staff, and he slams it down into the ground, causing a monumental explosion of energy that obliterates all the zombies. Thanks to Jihan's massive last-minute contribution, his team manages to secure 1st place in the mission, and they emerge as the final survivors of the battle. Thanks to that, he succeeds in his limited-time quest, but he was unable to complete his linked quest of killing 1,000 zombies alone. The game comes to an end, and Jihan begins the process of teleporting back to his home just before he departs. His teammates rush over to congratulate him on a job well done. He carried them so effortlessly and came out as the MVP despite everything. And the archer is now more than eager to team up with him again. But while the archer fawns over our MC, Guyong cannot help but be shocked at the sheer amount of damage that their support dealt, despite being a full level lower than her. She thinks to herself that this has to be some kind of system bug. She is unable to hide just how utterly surprised she is. The archer decides to log out of the game first, leaving her all alone with Jihan. She seizes the opportunity to approach him before he can leave, and she even calls him by his full name, which surprises Jihan. After all, they should not have met at this point in time, but Guyong does not care. With the raw potential and achievements that he has displayed during these past couple of missions, she can tell that this man is definitely someone they need to have at the Divergent Guild. As a proud member of the Divergent Guild, she must recruit this man no matter the cost. But now that she is staring right at him, she ends up blurting out a request for his phone number instead. Suddenly, her composed expression dissolves into extreme panic as she understands that she skipped many crucial steps to get to this point. She is asking for his phone number during their very first conversation, and she has to hurry up and try to explain herself before he ends up getting the completely wrong idea. Before she can get her jumbled words out properly, though, Jihan simply apologizes and he tells her that he doesn't recall his phone number right now. Then he opens his status window and logs out with a quick goodbye before she has a chance to say anything else. Gyeong takes a moment to ponder how exactly a person can forget their own number before she realizes that she has most likely just been rejected. Back in the real world, it turns out that Jihan genuinely does not remember his old number. He used his American phone number for a long time in his old life, and he hasn't had the time to memorize his current Korean number since he was reincarnated into this brand new life. There's no way he can ask other people what his own number is. So for the time being, he's just going to have to leave those thoughts for later. The much more important thing to consider right now is that he has been scouted. It appears that with all his showing off as of late, he has ended up standing out far too much. Now that he thinks about it again, he probably should have gotten her number from her instead. But he has no intention of joining any guild right now. For now, he has to focus on reaping as many rewards as he can from quests. He managed to raise his own level by 2 points, and he even managed to earn 1,500 GP thanks to his efforts. But he can't buy any sacred items with just that small amount. The divine items he wishes to buy are much cheaper in this past than they were in his own time, but the cost is still too much for him. For now, he will have to go back home and rummage through his sister's storage a little bit more. He makes it back home, and he immediately notices someone else's shoes by the front door. He instantly realizes who else is at home with him, and the sudden shock causes him to drop his bag. Every person has moments that they regret for their entire lives, and Jihan also has these kinds of similar regrets. His greatest single regret, though, is the horrible fact that he could not protect his beloved niece, Seiya, in his previous life. He had so very much that he wanted to say if they ever met again. He remembers how incredibly strong she was, and how she even once told him that she would be the one to protect him. And now she is standing before him again, alive and well, as if nothing had ever happened. Above all other things, he wanted to tell her just once more that he truly missed her. Yoon Seiya just turned 18 years old this year, and she is the daughter of Yoon Sejin and Jihan's older sister. She was not at home on the day he regressed, because she was with a group that was living in Jeju. But she was the only one who ended up returning home early, because she was born when his sister had to work to provide for them. Jihan was the one in charge of caring for Seiya from a young age. Now her mother is gone, and her father is defecting to Japan all of a sudden, and changing his very name. Now that everyone else is gone, the only family that they have left in this world is each other. Right now, she is the single most important person in his entire life. And all of this tragedy happened because of Yoon Sejin's sudden decision. Earlier that day, Seiya had contacted her father to find out what caused him to change sides. All of a sudden, and he told her that he had fallen in love. He had announced it to her so very casually, and even though she was completely freaking out on the phone call with him, he seemed far too calm about the entire situation. She had asked him what he wanted her to do now that he was disappearing, and she even asked if he was just throwing her away for nothing. And he had calmly replied that yes, he was throwing her away, because that was the condition that his brand new love had given him, without even so much as another word or a goodbye. He had hung up the call and ended his relationship with his own daughter in a single, cruel move. That's unbelievably trashy. But Jihan had always known him to be that kind of a man. He is an irresponsible, selfish renegade that is willing to discard his only daughter and his entire country for the sake of just one girl. Because of that, the innocent Seiya was left completely alone and in another life, had ended up taking her own life. Seiya turns around and notices that her family photo has been shattered, and Jihan immediately rushes forward to apologize, thinking that even with what the treacherous Yoon Seo-jin did, he is still her father. But to his complete surprise, she reveals that she had wanted to break it instead. Then she tells him that she is fine and puts on a brave face. This is always how Seiya had been. Whether her mother passed away or her father betrayed her and left, she would always wear a bright smile in her life, while worrying more about her uncle than she did about herself. But even though he knows that she can take care of herself, he does not want her to have to be like that anymore. From this moment on, even though she is all grown up, he wants to be the one to care for her and protect her. Seiya closes her eyes and lets him hug her tightly. But their tender moment is ruined when she tells him that he is all sweaty. Elsewhere, in the Seoul metropolitan city, inside the Gangnam-gu headquarters of the Divergent Guild, Lee Hae-yeon does not even try to stifle her roaring laughter. After her prize bodyguard tells her about her run-in with Jihan, the beautiful Lim Gyeong asked for a man's phone number, and he actually refused. And on top of all that, her laughter causes Gyeong to accept that she is not as beautiful as Lee Hae-yeon seems to believe that she is. But that could not be further from the actual truth. She just has no idea how incredibly popular she really is. Even the few people that they have just walk past cannot help but stare and whisper about how cool she is. The two of them make their way over to the company lounge, and Lee Hae-yeon feels especially at ease being there. The two of them are here to discuss what their strategy is going to be regarding Jihan's official recruitment. They must recruit him no matter what it takes. And even the higher-ups are pressuring her to get him on their team as quickly as humanly possible. As they're talking, Hae-yeon notices a new notification on her personal phone. It's someone who is broadcasting a live stream, and she's confused about who this could be, since there should not be any major matches happening today. The person streaming is usually a gambling streamer that Hae-yeon follows. Once in a while, she calls it strategy analysis, but it is just simple, degenerate gamble. But the individual who is hosting the stream is definitely not who they were expecting to see. It is Song Ji-han, and he is beginning an impromptu live stream, seemingly without any prior announcements. On the other end of the stream, Jihan is setting up the camera while Seiya advises him from just off-screen. Gyeong struggles to understand just why. Jihan is appearing on a gambling prediction live stream, but Hae-yeon is more fixated on the title of the stream. Jihan is boldly claiming to be the brother-in-law of the Sword King. The people who are watching the stream are also confused by this completely sudden announcement, and comments fly into the stream's chat, asking what is going on. The large statue behind him is the infamous twin sword statue, which proves that he is broadcasting from the Sword Palace penthouse. Now that the stream has officially and properly begun, Jihan tells his niece, Seiya, to step back. Then he channels immense power into his foot and stomps down on the ground, shattering the expensive floor beneath him. Shatter into pieces. Then, with a single raw fist, he smashes the statue to rubble. The audacious act sends shockwaves through all who are watching the stream, and it causes a tidal wave of thousands of new viewers to flood his channel. Now that he has made such a massive splash and ensnared the interest of so many people across the world, it is time for him to directly address the traitorous Sword King and Yoon Se-jin's shocking naturalization to Japan. The stage for this spectacle is the platform known as Battle2, the integrated streaming system of the entire BattleNet. And it is a platform that holds an unrivaled market share across the globe, since it is an integral part of the BattleNet. Jihan can also receive quests directly linked to Battle2. These include gaining a certain number of concurrent viewers, new subscribers, and total views. Because of this, he has yet another avenue to acquire precious achievement points by creating a massive spectacle on the platform, and completely destroying the twin sword statue is most certainly one surefire way to make a major splash online. For our protagonist, Song Ji-han, there is no better scenario than this, a chance to cash in on all of the available rewards. As the viewers continue to pour into his stream, he continues to rack up achievement points from the many milestones he is currently shattering. Meanwhile, the people watching are still reeling that he dared to destroy such an important and symbolic statue. And, as one would expect, a tidal wave of dislikes are now flooding in. There's also a large number of commenters who share the same profile. Picture a stark black logo adorned with twin swords. These people are none other than the Sword King family, and the mere thought of them makes Jihan's eye twitch with pure rage. That crazed, fanatical fan club of Yoon Se-jin is what drove his niece, Seiya, to her death in his past life. While they were the people who once supported the Sword King the most, their bitter resentment after he abandoned them for Japan continued to fester. And in the end, those twisted emotions began to gravitate towards Yoon Se-jin's only blood relative left behind, Yoon Seiya. Their venomous words and boiling anger never failed to reach Seiya, no matter how far or how fast she ran. And in the end, she lost her precious life because of their senseless cruelty. Since they desperately needed someone to blame and direct their rage at, they targeted his completely innocent niece. But in this life, he will not allow that to happen. If they truly need someone to point their fingers at, then Jihan will gladly become their new target. Our MC clears his throat and commands everyone to listen very carefully. He then punches the still crumbling monument again, just to ensure that all eyes remain fixed squarely on it. Then he makes it crystal clear by proclaiming that Edo Ryuhei, their so-called former Sword King, will not be returned. As he continues with his grand announcement, People in the chat begin to recognize him from his past achievements, specifically from the Brutal Bronze tutorial, where he made a massive impact by seizing first place against all odds. But the simple fact that he is still a bronze rank definitely undermines his attempts to act as an authority figure. Jihan completely ignores their chatter, and then he presents his irrefutable evidence to the camera, bringing his phone in close to the microphone to play a secret recording. This audio is from a call between the man now known as Ryu Hai and Seiya, right after the Sword King chose to naturalize as Japanese. On the recording, Ryu Hai clearly proclaims that the reason he is abandoning Korea is because he has found another woman that he loves. He admits that he is leaving his entire country for her sake, and he is even casting aside his only daughter without a shred of remorse. This was a cruel condition that his new love gave him to be accepted. Now that the intended message has been delivered to the world, Jihan ends the recording, leaving the viewers utterly speechless. But most of them still are not convinced. It's pretty much just unsubstantiated gossip at this point, and not yet concrete evidence that their beloved Sword King has truly left. To drive the point home even further, Seiya herself steps in front of the camera to continue the announcement. She proclaims that her father said he would pass down the Sword Palace to her, but she refuses to accept the inheritance of a man who has abandoned his own country and his very own family. Because of that, she intends to instead donate the entire Sword Palace to the country, in the hopes that this massive donation will become a huge source of support for the growth of young Korean players. As she bravely continues with her speech, Jihan smiles as his grand plans all come together beautifully. Just a half hour earlier, he first told Seiya that he wanted them to give away the entire house, just like everyone else would be. She was completely bewildered that he would suggest such a thing. Why on earth would he want to give away everything that they have? He cannot tell her the true reason, of course, and he does not even know if he could fully convince her, if he were to try. After all, since they would not be selling the massive building, and instead just casually giving it all away for free, it would seem like a truly insane and reckless decision. But Jihan absolutely must convince her to do this for her own sake, no matter what it takes. In his previous life, after Yoon Se-jin single-handedly destroyed Korea by becoming Japan's new champion, the rage of the Korean people grew so uncontrollably that they ended up confiscating all of the assets of Yoon Se-jin, including the very sword palace that they lived in. Seiya had been left with nowhere to go, and she could not endure all the stalking and threats from the deranged Sword King family fan club. At the very end of it all, she took her own life. Since this very place is going to be taken from them anyway, it would be far better to give it away to win Korea's favor and keep Seiya safe. To Seiya, though, he is just a freeloader uncle who drinks all day long at home, and he certainly cannot tell her that he came back from the future either, but he had to find some way to convince her. Surprisingly, though, while he was still contemplating how to get her on board with his seemingly insane idea, she unexpectedly agreed to his plan. He had to take a moment to double-check with her, to ask if she was truly all right with this decision, since even to him, his sudden request would make absolutely no logical sense. The reason she had decided to place her trust in him is because he is not the kind of person that would ever suggest something like this for no good reason. And more importantly, it has been a very long time since Seiya has seen this confident side of him, so she ultimately decided to trust his judgment completely. Thanks to her truly impressive resolve, he managed to make this whole situation a new reality. That doesn't mean that there won't still be problems going forward. The Sword King family is still up in arms, though, and they're specifically calling out Jihan as a complete fraud and a con man. That is exactly what he wants from them. However, he wants them to keep firing all their insults directly at him and avoid messing with his niece, Seiya, completely. But even this still isn't quite enough. To finish the entire job, to make absolutely sure that everything is perfect, he's going to need to drive one final, decisive nail into the coffin. He steps back into the camera's view and calls out Yoon Se-jin by name specifically. He tells the viewers that the reason the Sword King gave for leaving was because of a woman, but the real truth is that he is a has-been. Seiya can only watch in horror, since this part definitely was not in the script from earlier, and she has no idea what she should do. The commenters immediately start going crazy, with some not believing he would dare to say such a thing, while others can only laugh at the sheer absurdity of his claim. But Jihan continues to provoke him further, claiming that the only reason Yoon Se-jin actually left was because he knew he could no longer make it in Korea Even Gaiyong and Heian can't help but scream at the things he is saying. Then Jihan finishes his speech by declaring that Yoon Seo-jin should stay safe and well in Japan, because they will be meeting each other very soon, so that Jihan can personally crush him. The stream ends after that, and the two of them head back inside the house to freshen themselves up. Seiya confronts her uncle about the complete chaos that has erupted online due to his inflammatory statements. Both Korea and Japan are now in a complete uproar because of what he said, but Jihan is not at all worried. He assures her that nothing will happen, and that Seiya should just ignore all the new publicity this is bringing them, so she does not get stressed out unnecessarily. Because of his most recent actions, Seiya cannot help but notice that something seems incredibly different about her uncle. It is almost as if he became a completely different person overnight. But it's not at all surprising that she feels this way. After all, there is no way that he would act normally after dying, and then regressing all the way to the past. He asks her if all she ever saw in him was a freeloader who drinks all day, and Seiya quickly tries to backtrack on her words, even though she does admit that it is true, that she had seen him that way before. As the two of them are talking, the doorbell suddenly rings, and Jihan already knows who it must be, but he was not expecting them to show up this early. Now that things have finally come to this point, it is time for him to start earning some real money. Elsewhere in Tokyo, Japan, Yoon Seo-jin watches the news report as he sits beside a woman who is sleeping peacefully in the bed. The news anchor recounts the events that have occurred recently and states that the relationship between Korea and Japan is only expected to deteriorate continually due to his naturalization over to Japan, and has only gotten worse, since the news has now spread that he did all of this for a woman. Now with Jihan, Yoon Seo-jin's own brother-in-law, coming out with even more direct provocation. Things are only set to get much, much worse. And now, all that is left is to see how the Sword King will react. It could even be said that Jihan is a representation of all of Korea's fury. The woman then stirs from the bed, and Seo-jin turns off the broadcast, afraid that the noise might have woken her up. But she simply assures him that she no longer needs to sleep. She is much more worried about him and the very hard times that he will have to go through going forward. But Ryohei quickly stops her and tells her that she should no longer call him Seo-jin anymore. He has taken on her own name, and that is how he wants to be addressed from this moment on. This woman, named Shizuru, clings tightly to him and assures him that he is still Yoon Seo-jin, Korea's #1 player, and that the truth has not changed. But there is a strange and unnatural power to her words, and it seems that the things she is saying to him have a much heavier ability than just being simple, mere words. Then she pulls him in close, and the two of them share a kiss, as she reminds him that she is now his Yoon Seo-jin. Back with our determined protagonist. He opens up the door, and standing right outside is the man that he had been expecting. This man is a high-ranking government official, and it appears that he and Jihan at least know each other a little bit. His name is Park Yun-sik, and he is the department manager of the BattleNet in South Korea. In his past life, after Yoon Seo-jin had left the country, the department stopped visiting them. But it seems that he made such a huge splash today that they simply cannot afford to ignore him any longer. However, even though the government eventually stopped coming, this man had still taken the time to take him and Seiya into his own personal consideration and had taken care of them. Well, now that the stage has been set and all the players have arrived, it is time for Jihan to begin taking all the things that he will need. The three of them sit down together to talk, and Yoon-sik gets directly down to business. He knows that they will not be able to bring the Sword King back, and the entire government is well aware of this fact as well. But they cannot let the general citizenry know about it just yet. The highly anticipated Korea versus Japan match will be happening soon, and they need the people to be in high spirits for that match. Jihan can see exactly where this conversation is heading, and he tells Yoon-sik to just get to the point and to stop beating around the bush. What they truly desire is for Jihan to retract the donation of the Sword Palace, since if the government accepts his donation, it will be seen as an official recognition that the Sword King is not coming back. Yoon-sik is shocked that Jihan hit the nail on the head so very easily, and even he starts to believe that Jihan really has become an entirely different and new person. The Jihan from before was just a jobless, degenerate alcoholic, addicted to gambling. Setting aside his own shock, Yoon-sik confirms everything that Jihan has just said, but he tells him that they have not yet completely given up on the Sword King's return. So, instead of a complete donation, The government would like to propose a co-sign management instead. This means that the ownership will be transferred to someone else, but they will still have joint decision-making power in its affairs. It is a clever way of making sure that they can still be prepared for the potential return of the Sword King. The government also requests that the two of them continue to reside within the Sword Palace, which, in the end, makes this a win-win situation for both sides. Yunsik slides a formal document towards them, which goes into much more detail about the new agreement, and he urges the two of them to read it over carefully and consider it. It appears they really did put a lot of thought and careful consideration into this proposal. Jihan was truly just going to give the whole place away, but if they're willing to offer this deal, then it is even better for their side. However, in exchange for this, there's a certain favor that Jihan would like to ask for. Time passes after that fateful event, and yet another match is about to begin. Inside the BattleNet, a streamer known as the Golden Light starts a stream, and viewers almost immediately come flooding into the battle tube to watch his broadcast. The popular streamer stands proudly atop the Colosseum statue and welcomes everyone watching to his new stream. The other players below begin spawning into the match, and Golden Light then jumps down from on high to join them. As he continues to entertain his legion of viewers, someone gifts the stream a donation and tells Golden Light to make sure that he teaches the bronze players a harsh lesson. Everyone else can only watch on in great annoyance as Golden Light begins to dance to entertain his viewers. As a thank you for the generous donation, they are definitely not as happy to see him in their lobby as many viewers are, and that is because beneath that innocent smile lie incredibly devious and malicious intentions. He became a popular streamer because of his looks and hyper-personality, but also because he is an infamous and notorious troll. He used to be a well-respected gold rank player, but he demoted himself all the way down to bronze on purpose for the content, calling it deep sea traveling. He has no regard for the game itself and only cares about having his fun, which makes him the very pinnacle of a game-ruining troll. Even though he has now demoted himself to the absolute lowest league, his equipment and stats are still all at a gold rank level. So he's well known for harassing and killing bronze league players who are much, much weaker than he is. Now that he is here and his eager fans are watching him expectantly, it is time for Golden Light to begin his search for his very first victim. He scans through the assembled crowd of players, and his eyes eventually fall on a piece of potential content without even missing a single beat. Golden Light rushes over to Jahan with a microphone in his hand, eager to interview the man who has recently become the talk of the town. At this point, Jihan now goes by a great many nicknames, and people have been showering him with a lot of attention. Jihan, on the other hand, is just confused as to who this golden boy is. He is obviously a BattleTube streamer, and he is far too loud and obnoxious for Jihan's personal liking. But now that he actually thinks about it, there are quite a few BattleTube achievements that he has not yet managed to accomplish. Since the perfect opportunity has now come, Jihan might as well start his own live stream for his own viewers. He completely ignores the very shiny boy and summons his own BattleTube window to begin a new stream. Golden Light's viewers also notice the on-air mark above Jihan's head, and they realize that our MC is now also streaming. As a direct result, they start leaving to go and watch his stream, and our bright boy can't help but tremble with fear as he realizes that he has practically advertised Jihan's stream for free. Now that things have come down to this, he needs to figure out a way to get people to come back to his stream. As he is thinking, he gets a donation notification from someone with a sword, King Obsessed username, encouraging him to kill Song Jihan so that he ends up in last place. The reward for completing this heinous achievement is 2,000 GP. 1 GP is worth about 1,001. So this is effectively a 2,000,001 quest. The people who initiated the donation are none other than the members of the deranged Sword King family. When Golden Light does not immediately accept the quest, other members of the Sword King family all come together, and they continue to increase the bounty reward. It is abundantly clear that these people have a massive grudge against Jihan, but he had absolutely no idea it was to this great of an extent. They continue to raise the reward money, and it quickly passes 30,000 GP and even reaches 40,000 GP. Unfortunately for him, The remaining players are finally summoned, which causes the donations to finally stop at a whopping 42,000 GP. Despite the already insane amount of money that's being offered, Golden Light is still quite upset that the GP stopped at under 50,000. One of the other Sword King family members agrees to donate an additional 10,000 GP if he can successfully defeat and humiliate Jihan. That finally gets Golden Light to move with a renewed determination, and his new target has now been set. The instant the match officially starts, Golden Light readies himself to charge at an unsuspecting Jihan. He activates one of his skills, which is called Charge. It accelerates a user's body forward at an incredibly high speed. He rushes in, and in a single instant, he is behind Jihan with his sword raised. The devastating attack connects, but Jihan successfully manages to parry it with absolutely no problems. Unexpectedly, he is wielding another one of his strange weapons. This time, it is a club that is part of a cooking set, and it is a D-rank, extraterrestrial holy item. Jihan is still surprised that despite swinging with all that he had, Golden Light's expensive weapon somehow survived the direct attack. Since things have now come to this, Jihan also summons a sword to use, purely out of etiquette. In a matter of mere seconds, Jihan is able to cut down Golden Light with simple and precise sword strikes. And the commentators suddenly realize that he is using sword chi, which normally should not be possible for someone in the Bronze League. He is also wielding the power of white sacred flames, which is a form of divine power. But if he is using divine power, that means that he has to be a support class, regardless of just how he managed to do it. Jihan has now successfully gotten first blood, and all with a pathetic D-rank kitchen knife, a holy item that is also part of the cooking set of divine weapons. However, although he has been killed rather embarrassingly, Golden Light is not down for the count just yet. He has somehow managed to revive himself, thanks to a special item he possesses called the Crucifix of Revival. This powerful item can only be used once, however, and it cannot be used during any national leagues, promo games, or official guild matches. Despite the fact that he has already been revived, there is no point to it, since the goal was not just to kill Jihan, but to also make sure that he placed last. And since he died first, Jihan cannot possibly be in last place. Despite all of their very obvious disappointment, Golden Light is determined to make sure that he redeems himself with Song Jihan's utter defeat. Unluckily for him, Song Jihan is now determined to make sure that he completely wipes the arrogant smirk off of this golden boy's face. In a matter of seconds, Jihan takes him out once again, unintentionally granting himself a double kill. As he walks away from the dying streamer, he thinks about the strange item that the man used. In the future, nobody used it because the revival process had certain severe flaws. That aside, today's match is more hectic than usual. That is most likely because of the special spectators who have come to watch the game here today. Today's esteemed spectators are all elves, and it appears that they're all watching Jihan intently. Our MC is not particularly fond of their race, since the elves played a very big role in humanity's eventual downfall. Right now, there's nothing that he can do about them, however, so the best he can do is to focus on dealing with the people directly in front of him. From the looks of it, the other players are now giving him a very wide berth, and it is almost as if they are treating him like some sort of pariah. When he turns to even look in their direction, they all run away from him in absolute terror. It is only natural, since he just ripped a gold-ranked player apart twice. So they clearly understand that they are no match for him at all. This is not good news for our protagonist, since that means his hunting efficiency is about to drop. And after he had finally found a D-rank holy item, too, if he wants to meet the manifestation conditions of these new items, he's going to have to fight a lot more. As he's trying to figure out what to do, a new notification pops up in his status window, and Jihan smiles widely as he reads through it. It looks like things are about to take a turn. He has been given a quest to subjugate the goblins that have now gathered all around the fearsome goblin champion. Thanks to this new quest, he should be able to meet his fighting quota, despite all the other players running away from him. In an instant, he is completely surrounded by several goblins, and it looks like he is hopelessly and completely outnumbered. But in just another instant, it is the goblins that are running away from him instead. As he charges at them all with truly terrifying speed, the monsters cry out for help. as they are smacked and stabbed with Jihan's strange cooking equipment. Thanks to his constant and relentless fighting, the holy cooking set finally begins to react to his actions. It is all thanks to the fact that he read through the items, hidden descriptions earlier before he ever started using them. He is supposed to break their heads and then gouge out their hearts. And he is supposed to do all of that in this very specific order, in order to use the sacred items properly so that they can finally react to him. It is a very good thing that he figured all of this out before the very end of the game. But with the way things are currently going, this process is taking way too long. If he had learned this just a little bit earlier, then there would have been a few more goblins left for him to use his powerful new weapons on. But at least it is not completely over just yet. There is one more goblin left for him to take out, and this one is much more threatening than all the rest. This massive beast is the goblin champion, and in comparison to all the normal goblins, he is way bigger and incredibly stronger. Despite its immense size and strength, though, a good smack with the cooking club is more than enough to send the goblin champion crashing heavily down to the ground. Then Jihan takes advantage of that and stabs it directly in the heart. Despite its size, it is still just a big goblin. And with that, the quest has been successfully cleared, and he receives 500 achievement points as his reward, as well as earning 1 full point of divine power in the process. But because he used the items so heavily, the rank of the weapons has now been reduced to an E. So he should only be able to earn divine power one more time from them. Hunting down monsters is far too slow, though, so he's going to need to catch some players instead. They are way too far away from him, though. So now, if they refuse to come to him, he's going to have to go to them himself. The commenters, who have been quietly watching the stream this entire time, finally emerge from hiding to talk about how scary Jihan looks now. But out of all the people currently watching the stream, there is one single person who is far too upset about what is going on his own screen. It is Golden Light, who is watching Jihan stream from the outside, and he notices one comment in particular saying that Jihan is 1,000 times better than he is. While he's upset about the way they are all talking about him, he is much more curious about the absolute beast that is Jihan. From his recent fight with the goblin, the system has now calculated his estimated combat stats, and his average strength is sitting at around 35. The average of a normal Bronze League player is only 25, and Jihan is somehow a full 10 points above that average. None of this makes any logical sense. And Golden Light even starts to believe that Jihan must be using some kind of illegal hacks as he lays on his bed lamenting his utter failure and the completely cracked beast that is our main character. He suddenly hears screams of terror coming from his monitor. He looks up, just in time to see Jihan smacking someone in the face with his club. In a matter of seconds, Jihan has already taken out multiple players at once, and the all-out brawl that ensues is entirely one-sided. In just a matter of seconds, Jihan has killed countless players with ease, bringing the number of total players down to a minuscule number. The few remaining players all realize that this is no longer the time for them to be fighting amongst themselves. This is the time for them to band together and beat up this hack user. A powerful mage and an archer are the first to team up and try to take down Jihan, but all their attacks are either blocked or pushed away with utter ease. After a short while, they stop their attacks completely. Once it looks like nothing they do will ever work on Jihan, they do not even try to fight back against him anymore, and just stare at this absolute beast in complete disbelief before he comes over and puts them all out of their misery. Jihan has now managed to get a grand total of 10 kills, and his viewers are going absolutely wild after watching the awesome feat of him taking all the players down. Thanks to his massive and impressive number of kills, the cooking set begins to react once again, and he gains another full point in divine power as a direct result. Then, the items downgrade themselves once again to F rank, making them now practically useless to him. He also clears another hidden quest, which required him to achieve 10 kills within the Colosseum. That grants him an additional 5,000 achievement points as a reward. With more divine power and achievement points now in the bag, Jihan has successfully acquired everything that he wanted, but something important is still missing. He needs something definitive and powerful to boost his own power, as high as it can possibly go. Then, he notices that he has received a new epic quest. It requires him to find the legendary Shadow Queen, who is located near the spectators in the Colosseum map, and to provoke her. An epic quest is not supposed to appear in the Bronze League, but the more important thing here is the rewards. which are a massive 50,000 achievement points, as well as gaining the constellation, the Shadow Queen's interest. A constellation is an absolute being that represents an entire star, and they're considered to be divine beings. In the BattleNet, a constellation's interest is the same as a sponsor, and they can help a player to acquire abilities that a normal player would never be able to obtain. It looks like something that is only possible in the Diamond League is somehow happening to him right at this moment. If that is truly the case, then he must meet the Shadow Queen at all costs. If even just a single one is on his side, then the other constellations will also become interested in him. However, with the sheer number of elves staring down at him from the side, will he really be able to locate the Shadow Queen among them? Outside of the game, however, the entire world is recoiling from Jihan's amazing accomplishment. Song Jihan's incredible record of 10 kills at the Coliseum was a first in the entire country. After the Great Yin Season, news of this feat quickly spread like wildfire across social media communities, and as a direct result, he gained around 10,000 new subscribers, and his streams now gather up to 4,000 simultaneous viewers. Ironically, those who sought Jihan's ruin had become his fervent followers. The collective animosity now found its new target, Golden Light. He had unwittingly become the very pedestal for Jihan's meteoric ascent. His once esteemed reputation was now dragged mercilessly through the mud. In the wake of recent events, he's now desperately scrambling to figure out how to salvage his career, with few paths remaining open to him. Golden Light makes a calculated choice to join the Saiwan Jihan phenomenon. He decides to become one of his staunchest supporters. From this day forward, Golden Light now harbors the ambition of becoming Saiwan Jihan's editor, vowing to forge him into BattleTube's reigning champion. Meanwhile, back within the Sword Palace, Seiya could only gaze at her uncle, utterly astonished. After witnessing the sheer dominance in the afternoon's battle, she couldn't fathom how her uncle had grown so powerful. She almost began to pity the other seasoned players he faced. It was a one-sided slaughter, akin to public humiliation. A legion of viewers also wished to shower Jihan with donations, but his donation portal remained conspicuously disabled. This was mainly because his stream was a spur-of-the-moment decision, leaving no time for him to configure the settings. Since the system wasn't yet established, Seiya wisely suggested that Jihan increase the minimum donation amount. His focus would shatter if a constant flood of donations poured in. So, it was best to set an incredibly high barrier. This would ensure he wouldn't be overwhelmed with notifications. Jihan concurred, setting the threshold at a staggering 10,000 GP. That's 10 million won, as Seiya wondered if that amount was truly. But Jihan's mind was elsewhere, consumed by the monumental Shadow Queen epic quest he'd just received. His mission, locate this mysterious figure and provoke her wrath. But he couldn't devise a plan to find her in such a vast crowd. Seiya noticed the intense concentration etched on his face. She then asked if he required her assistance. Her demeanor was a striking echo of her own mother. A warm smile graced Jihan's face. He saw no harm in it. He rose to his feet and chose to confide in her about his burden. He revealed the epic quest and the enigma known as the Shadow Queen. But even she was completely clueless as to who that might be. Their only certainty was that she was hidden among the spectators. Seiya resolved to meticulously review the match replays, scouring the audience for any sign of her. With her sharp eyes on the task, their progress should accelerate. Yet, Jihan felt a pang of guilt for having to ask for her help. Unmasking the Shadow Queen was a monumental task, like finding a needle in a haystack. Now that she was sufficiently occupied, however, he finally had the time to deal with the settlements, the ones he had been postponing for far too long. Using the vast reservoir of achievement points he had amassed, he acquired an additional class slot. And now, the moment had come to add a new class and seize new powers. 3 distinct paths lay before him: the warrior, the archer, and the mage. And out of these choices, he made the decisive move to become a mage. The instant he confirmed the new class, a novel power began to surge forth from the core of his being. It was a power wholly different from the divine, granting him entry into a new realm of potent abilities. The logic behind selecting the mage class after his supporter class was due to a truly unique stat: one that he could only awaken by possessing both classes. This transcendent new ability was called Force. Before his regression, he would often listen to Baron's drunken confessions. One fateful day, during one of these intoxicated tirades, he had revealed to Jihan a wealth of extraneous information. Things like how he would have acknowledged Jihan as an American if only he had been naturalized sooner. But on that day, he also spoke of something truly extraordinary. He spoke of his ultimate skill, Force, a power he achieved by flawlessly merging divine energy with mana. It's a feat of immense difficulty, one others couldn't even attempt. This is because Baron is the sole player in the world with two classes. This is a power that no one else could possibly obtain. And the only reason, Baron possesses it is due to his two status windows, which is the nature of his SSS rank gift. Jihan had originally questioned if it was permissible for him to possess this secret. But at the end of the day, Baron was utterly confident he could tell anyone on the planet because he believed he was the only one capable of wielding two classes. He was unquestionably arrogant, but the truth he spoke was not a fabrication. Force is an overwhelming power that completely warps the fabric of space. But now, Baron's monopoly on this godlike power was about to be shattered. Jihan knew all the requirements, and he had now fulfilled them. This was the very ability that catapulted Baron to first place in the world rankings, despite his abysmal control and clumsy utilization of it. So, if Jihan wanted to arm himself for the cataclysms of the future, then he absolutely had to seize this power for himself, no matter the cost, to obtain this power. He must concentrate the divine power into the palm of his hands and channel the flow of his mana from his heart towards them, creating a crucible where the two powers could merge. If he could achieve a perfect fusion of these powers and allow not a single wisp of energy to escape, then he would seize victory for a fleeting moment. It seemed as if his attempt had succeeded. But the swirling vortex of energy violently repelled him, slamming him into the wall. Following a brief, contained explosion, it was clear he had failed this time. He could not contain the raw power in his hands with strength alone. He was clearly missing a critical component. Perhaps he needed a larger mana pool or to be a higher level, but something vital was definitely absent. The issue is that he cannot contain the power within his hands indefinitely. So, maybe the real problem is where he's attempting to gather the power to begin with. Since he cannot hold onto the power in his hands, the next logical option would be to contain the power within his body instead. If he could fuse the divine power, which originates in the upper dantian, with the mana flowing from the central dantian, then he could stabilize the two with the power from the lower dantian. Anytime they struggled to harmonize, this should forge a perfect, self-contained form with no leakage. If he can then compress it in that state, then that should be the key to unlocking this new power. He resolves to try it, and the backlash on his body is cataclysmic. He cannot suppress an agonizing scream of pure torment as the power violently floods his entire body. A system notification suddenly materializes. It declares that he has initiated the daunting attempt of unifying the three dantians. However, almost a moment later, a dire warning flashes before him. It informs him he has exceeded the absolute limits of his endurance, and to persist meant to embrace certain annihilation. Downstairs, Seiya hears her uncle's screams as the agony completely overtakes him. She leaps to her feet, racing to see what could be wrong. Meanwhile, Jihan continues to endure the unimaginable pain from attempting to fuse the three dantians. To accomplish this and merge divine power with mana to wield force, he must subconsciously harness his strength in order to properly consolidate them. The conditions for this unification are exceptionally strict, and one must be able to flawlessly command the three, which all possess vastly different natures. On top of that, every single one of a person's stats must be at least 100 to even allow the process to proceed smoothly. If you are far from meeting these standards and foolishly try to unify the three dantians, then it is more than possible to forfeit your life. Seiya sprints desperately toward her uncle's room. As the sounds of his struggle grow more intense, she frantically calls his name as she rushes over, but there is no response. Eventually, she reaches his room and surprisingly finds him in perfect condition. He claims that he was screaming like that due to a sudden headache, but it's obvious that something far more dire must have been happening. She clearly doesn't buy his excuse, even as he attempts to brush it off as a joke. And Jihan finally drops the charade. once he sees that she has become genuinely distraught. As a direct consequence of his thoughtless actions, all of a sudden, Seiya bursts into tears, telling him that she was truly terrified for him. She truly believed something horrible had happened to him, which is why she had frantically rushed to his room. Jihan realizes that he might have made a grave mistake by not considering Seiya's feelings more carefully in that moment. But now that he at least seems to be unharmed, she asks him again if he's genuinely alright. He decides to treat it with sincerity and assures her that he is okay. Then, he apologizes for causing her so much worry. Seiya wipes the fresh tears from her eyes and lightly smacks his chest, attempting to act as though everything is back to normal, now that he has confirmed he's truly okay. With that, she turns away to resume her search for the Shadow Queen, and Jihan watches her depart with a fond smile. He definitely cannot afford to show his weaker side too often from now on, for Seiya's sake. On another note, the consolidation of the three Danshians ultimately failed. This was because he was deficient in both experience and level. But even though that was the outcome, he still managed to obtain the very power he craved. By successfully fusing divine power and mana, Jihan had now managed to exchange them both for the unique stat, which is Force. The connective link between the three Danshians is being maintained by a thread, but is still there. However, scrolling through his status window reveals something truly bizarre. The numerical value for his Force stat is peculiar. He only just acquired the ability now, but it's already starting from level 12. Since the link between the three Danshians is being sustained so weakly, then the stats for martial power and force are forced to share their respective ability values. This means that if he elevates his martial power stat by a single value, his force stat will also ascend in perfect sync. He tests this by raising his martial power to level 14, and his force stat immediately follows suit, also increasing to the magnificent level of 14. This is essentially a game-breaking cheat code. Possessing force by itself is a truly incredible stat, but now he can effortlessly upgrade it whenever he desires. If these are the perks he gains from such a fragile link, then how monumental will the benefits of consolidating the three Danshians be? As thrilled as he is about this massive boost in power, he has to leave things as they are for the time being. If he attempts to unify them once more, he might genuinely perish in the process, since he has already acquired what he desired. There is absolutely no reason for him to push his luck too far. Next, he decides to test out a mage skill. Now that he officially has the class, he summons a fireball, and a pathetic, tiny flame flickers into existence, as the system informs him that he lacks the required mana to sustain spells of any significant magnitude. It's a rather adorable little flicker of fire, but he most definitely cannot use this in actual combat. The following day, Jihan is awakened by the bright sunlight streaming into his window. The moment he opens his weary eyes, the system declares that he has acquired 10 divine power, and he can no longer obtain divine power from any holy items that are D rank or below. From this point forward, he can only gain divine power from holy items that are C rank and above. The previous night, he purchased 2 such items and slept with them beside him all night, in the hopes of receiving a substantial power boost from them. However, it appears his growth limitations have finally caught up with him. From now on, he's going to have to sell what he has remaining on the second-hand market to turn a decent profit. He emerges from his room and calls out for Seiya to see if she's awake. He receives no reply and descends the stairs to check on her, finding her slumped on the couch with earbuds in and a laptop resting on her lap. From the dark circles under her eyes and her weary expression, it's painfully obvious that she has pulled an all-nighter, and she confirms that she spent the entire night diligently searching for the Shadow Queen. Although Jihan feels terrible that he had to subject her to this ordeal, it appears that her tireless efforts were not entirely in vain. She shows him a video clip from a channel named Another Species Fan Cam, which is a popular BattleTube channel that is dedicated to observing the other species that come to spectate the player games. They employ their unique gift called Scope, which allows them to zoom in extraordinarily far with their streaming cameras. Thanks to their efforts, Seiya managed to discover something intriguing. In the video replay from the match Jihan was in recently, high up in the spectator area, seated in what appear to be specially crafted thrones, there are 2 elves that most certainly fit the criteria for queens, with their majestic, high-ranking appearance. One of these elves, in particular, is a regal dark elf, who undoubtedly looks as if she possesses some form of royalty. Jihan agrees, that there may indeed be a kernel of truth in what she's managed to uncover. But it's still far too early to jump to any conclusions. For the time being, Seiya decides she's going to continue investigating a bit more to see if she can unearth anything else useful. Amongst the other various recordings, Jihan, on the other hand, is quite certain that a constellation would not be found so easily. Seiya assures him that she will persist in her search through more videos, and even some recordings from abroad, starting the very next day. And the way she speaks sounds remarkably professional. She even volunteers to edit some of his video footage together for him to upload directly to BattleTube. She knows the intricacies of video editing from watching her dad's videos. For entertainment, the mention of her dad causes Jihan to freeze up and once more contemplate the man's actions. He cannot believe someone would truly abandon their own daughter like this for no discernible reason. Just 2 days prior, during his tense conversation with Unsik, the high-ranking government official revealed that he might know the name of the woman who stole the sword. King away. Her name is Edo Shizuru, and she is the wielder of the SSS rank gift, known ominously as a woman of matchless beauty. It's highly probable that Yoon Sejong had fallen prey to her skill, and that's also what the Korean government suspects. This is a shocking new development, even for Jihan. But the earth-shattering revelations don't end there. Unsik warns Jihan that the woman of matchless beauty skill transcends simple mind control and can even possess the ability to reshape a person's thoughts. Something eerily similar has transpired several times before, where the rising stars of Korea end up defecting to Japan. It's very likely that there are no limitations on the usage of her gift, which means she could manifest at any given moment and attempt to ensnare another powerful player. Following that conversation, Jihan continued to search for more information about Edo Shizuru, but it's as if the internet has been completely purged of any trace of her. It is highly probable that Japan is exercising extreme caution while managing her. Because of this, Jihan can't find anything out for the time being. But if what Park Yunsik is claiming is indeed true, then Jihan must also tread with extreme caution. There's a high probability that they have already begun their move. Meanwhile, as he is consumed by these thoughts, an aircraft descends upon a Korean airport, and on its wing, it is clearly written that the plane belongs to the Neo Self-Defense Force. Eventually, the time passes, and it's time for yet another major event in the small family's lives. Seiya waits impatiently by the door for her uncle, who appears to be taking his sweet time getting ready. If they waste any more time, they're definitely going to end up being late. Finally, Jihan completes his preparations and comes out to greet her. His hair is impeccably slicked back in style, and he is attired in an exquisitely fancy-looking suit. In this getup, he is more than ready to meet their new guests. The two of them enter the elevator, and on the way down, Seiya is visibly trembling with nerves. Jihan tells her to relax and not to worry about a thing, but Seiya cannot help but feel a little bit anxious. This is her very first time making an official public appearance following her dad's shocking incident. Jihan tells her that there is no need for them to heed what others think, since they have not committed any wrongdoing. Finally, they arrive at the grand lobby floor of the Sword Palace and are met by a massive gathering of people. Almost as soon as they step out of the elevator, they are greeted by Park Yunsik, who informs them that everything Jihan requested is prepared, so they can proceed immediately and begin the procedure. Jihan thanks the esteemed advisor for his assistance and entrusts him to oversee everything until the end of the event. This was the very favor that Jihan had requested back then. When they were discussing the status of the Sword King and all his assets, Jihan asked them to orchestrate an auction of the Sword King's entire collection, where they would sell Yoon Se-jeon's most cherished items and other valuable possessions. The entire point of this elaborate auction is to lure Japan over. And Jihan also made sure to handpick the specific items for the auction for that very specific purpose. The main prize is Yoon Se-jeon's legendary battle connector and all of the precious battle data stored within. It is highly probable that if Japan does appear, that is undoubtedly what they will attempt to claim. Depending on how the situation unfolds, the Sword King himself might even intervene to try and seize the battle connector. Regardless of what he chooses to do, the Korean citizens will be forced to confront the harsh reality that their beloved Sword King is gone and most likely will never be coming back. Yunsik quietly listens to Jihan's brilliant plan and notices that it's almost as if Jihan can peer into the future. This is their final opportunity to shift the tide of public opinion, and because of that, Jihan requests that they have the reporters Pay special attention to the Neo Self-Defense Force table as they stride towards the main lobby. Some people suddenly burst into the building and try to call for Seiya to stop. The bodyguards stationed at the door intercept them, and the unruly group of people declare that they are Seiya's family and that they are directly related to her. These people are none other than her aunts and uncles, and they are here to try and prevent her from starting the auction and selling off the Sword King's priceless items. They also make no attempt to hide their belief that Jihan has coerced her into doing all of this. They continue to hurl vile insults at Jihan, but Seiya steps forward and silences them. After all, her aunts and uncles were expelled from the Sword Palace, in the first place for using her dad's name to defraud innocent people. She knows the true reason they have appeared here. All of a sudden, it's because they want to seize her dad's fortune, now that he is gone. She knows what she is doing, since everything her dad left behind is hers, and they have absolutely no right to contest it with her. She knows that there's no point in speaking with them, and with nothing further to say, she turns her back and walks away from them, ordering the guards to eject them as quickly as possible. As the outsiders continue to try and fight their way inside, Jihan compliments Seiya on how incredibly cool she was just now. She truly knows how to stand up for herself, despite all the hardship that she has been forced to endure. The three of them finally make it to the lobby hall, where the momentous auction will take place. And the area is already teeming with news reporters, as well as the influential people who are interested in the items. The moment they walk through the grand doors, the reporters immediately begin snapping pictures of him and attempting to shout questions at him. They also bombard Seiya with a relentless barrage of photographs and questions, not even allowing them a moment to respond. Jihan grows tired of this constant, chaotic barrage of questions and unleashes his force to shatter their cameras, silencing them. Now that the disruptive noise has finally ceased, Jihan reminds them that they are currently attending an auction event, not a chaotic press conference. Then, with everyone finally settled down, he prepares to commence the event. 3 legendary items have been prepared to be auctioned off for this event. The first is Yun Seijion's prize BattleNet connector, which miraculously decreases the sensation of pain by 99%. It also comes preloaded with all of the combat data saved by the connector. Finally, there is the personal analysis of battles made by Yun Seijion himself, an in-depth analysis of East Asia's most high-ranking players. The Sword King's data is an invaluable treasure, and the analysis data is going to be incredibly useful, especially considering the Korea versus Japan national match will be taking place very soon. From the excited murmurs in the audience, Jihan can tell that no one would be willing to part with any of these items. A high-end player's personal analysis. Data isn't something that you can obtain just anywhere. The moment he finishes speaking, someone confidently raises their hand from the audience, and Jihan recognizes them in an instant. He introduces himself as Takeda Kazuo, a recruitment manager for Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force. He immediately makes an offer of 5 billion yen for all the lots in the auction. On top of that, he also wishes to request a private meeting with both Jihan and Seiya. His true intentions are incredibly transparent, and he doesn't even bother to conceal what he really desires. From this clandestine meeting, Jihan has no desire to play these games and addresses the man directly, that if there is something he wishes to say to them, then he could say it right here in front of everyone. With the recent shocking events that have transpired, this is hardly the time or place to be accepting private meetings. Takeda nervously wipes the sweat from his brow because of the intimidating way Jihan is glaring at him. He then warns our MC that if he continues to act so aggressively, then someone else may have to step in immediately. The bodyguard, who is silently standing behind Takeda, rushes forward in the blink of an eye and places her cold sword against Jihan's neck. Her name is Shadow, and although she is not comparable to the Sword King, she is still an exceptional player. Their threats are not even cleverly disguised. But Jihan remains completely unfazed by this blatant copycat of Yun Seijin. Everything that happened next transpired in a flash. 1 second, Shadow's deadly blade appeared before Jihan. The next, our MC delivered a thunderous punch clean to her jaw, causing her to stagger backwards in shock. She falters for just a moment, but then her simmering anger takes over and she prepares to draw her sword, intent on a fight. But Jihan calmly places a hand on her shoulder and reminds her that the auction is being streamed live through his Battle Tube channel worldwide. There's absolutely no way she can swing her weapon while the entire world is watching. But Takeda quickly de-escalates the situation with a nervous laugh and a placating wave of his hand. Then, he personally apologizes for his bodyguard's overt harshness and apologizes on her behalf. But despite that, he still doubles down on his offer of 5 billion yen. And the money must also include the private meeting he requested. But this time, he wants to hear a response to his offer directly from Seiya. After all, the Sword King's vast possessions now belong to Seiya, so she's the true owner of this entire auction. He strolls past Jihan and goes directly to Seiya, informing her that the private meeting is specifically for her. Surely, she must want to know where her father is. And Takeda promises that he will answer any and all questions she has about it. As Seiya struggles to formulate an answer, Takeda is completely and utterly sure that she will agree. There's absolutely no way she can reject this offer to speak with her own father. However, despite his overflowing cockiness, she met his offer with a stunning and absolute refusal. The response gives Takeda such a shock that he nearly glitches out. He cannot fathom that she would forsake 5 billion yen just to avoid a simple private meeting. That is the staggering equivalent of 50 billion won in Korean currency. As much as that would be incredible money, she understands that Jihan is absolutely right. They must be cautious because of the current times. And if her father is only willing to communicate through money, then Seiya doesn't want to know a single thing about him. On top of that, Seiya is still a minor, so she must abide by what Jihan says. At the end of the day, the rest of the audience sighs in collective relief, since they believed these high-value items would be sold off to Japan. They cannot let their guard down just yet, though. And even though she rejected the meeting, the Neo Self-Defense Force can still offer an absurd amount of money. Takeda takes a small, calming breath and accepts that they have refused his generous offer for a meeting. But even if that's the case, he still bids the 5 billion yen for the items regardless. According to him, the private meeting was merely an option that Takeda added personally, so there's absolutely no need for him to cancel the bid, simply because he was rejected. He was instructed to offer 5 billion from the beginning by the Sword King himself. On top of that, he also hands Seiya a letter from Yoon Sejong that he personally penned for her. The letter is stamped with a formal seal from Ito Ryohei, and just the mere sight of the new name fills Seiya with sadness. Then, as Seiya clutches the letter, Takeda turns and taunts the crowd of Korea's BattleNet concern parties, asking if they lack the funds to compete with him. Jihan knows this man's insidious tactics all too well. After all, the Neo Self-Defense Force's recruitment manager is someone that was banned from entering the U.S. In Jihan's previous life, he was suspiciously adept at recruiting foreign players, and because of this, he was infamously called Japan's Calamity. There's a very high chance that he is deeply connected to the player that wields the woman of matchless beauty skill. Jihan will need to be extremely wary of him. But by the official terms of the auction, since no one is capable of competing with the price that has been set, then Jihan has no other choice but to sign a contract with the man. The atmosphere is incredibly tense, and Japan acquired the items far too easily, almost as if they had been promised them in advance. This will undoubtedly look terrible in the media. And the other, people begin to wonder what the point of them even coming here truly was at this point. Jihan just wishes for anything to happen. He desperately needs a turning point to change the state of affairs. Suddenly, Seiya steps up to the microphone and begins to speak. She's reading the letter that Ryohei sent her directly out loud to the public, as well as the thousands of people that Jihan is currently streaming to. He mentions how he heard about her desire to give away the Sword Palace and how profoundly disappointed he is in her. Then he says that the 5 billion yen is the final asset that he will ever give to her, and it also serves as the end of their relationship as father and daughter. As she finishes reading the heartbreaking letter, she begins to cry, confirming that it is genuinely from him because of his handwriting. Jihan looks away as his beloved niece starts to weep on the stage. He heard that the woman of matchless beauty skill is a potent form of mental manipulation, which is a level above the mental conquest skill. This must be the truth for Yoon Se-jeon to turn away from his own daughter so blindly. Jihan had always despised the man, but he was, at the very least, a very good and dependable dad to Seiya. To think that Ryohei would do something so cruel to his own daughter With a surge of defiance, she tears the letter to absolute shreds. She then commands Takeda to relay a chilling message to the traitor, Ryuha. Tell him that she has graciously accepted his assets, and that she is overjoyed to finally sever their connection. With her declaration made, she has a moment of realization that destroying the paper like this will only create a hassle for the cleaning staff, those who will have to tend to the venue later on. Jihan calmly tells her not to be concerned. He then unleashes his force, gathering every single paper fragment, before conjuring arcane fire to incinerate them all to ash. Fire, an unmistakable sign of a mage's power. This display only deepens the crowd's confusion about the true extent of Jihan's abilities. He is known to possess the combat skills of a top-tier warrior, while simultaneously commanding the vast mana of a mage, and the sacred divine power of a support. Witnessing this unbelievably powerful man, Takeda cannot help but conclude that he is an asset that Japan absolutely must acquire. But Takeda is not the only one to recognize Jihan's immense talent. Other recruiters also present at the grand event scramble to thrust their business cards toward Jihan. Knowing full well that he is not yet aligned with any guild, they are all desperate for the chance to recruit him. Jihan is suddenly inundated by the sheer volume of people vying for his attention, and as he tries to push them all away, Seiya's voice calls out to him from behind the mob. He initially intends to tell her that he will meet up with her shortly, but then he notices her pale and sickly expression. Suddenly, her body begins to sway, and she collapses to the floor, completely unconscious. Jihan instantly abandons the lobby, carving a path towards Seiya, as he frantically cradles her limp form in his arms. Her eyes eventually flutter open, and she weakly calls his name. He urges her to just hold on for a moment, while he prepares to rush her to the nearest hospital, but she pulls him in closer and whispers a secret into his ear she is just faking right now. She saw him struggling within the crowd, so she decided to create a grand diversion. The guards successfully form a barrier against the recruiters, as Jihan plays his part, tending to Seiya on the stage. Now aware that she is perfectly fine, he can finally breathe a quiet sigh of relief. But that is not the case for the people watching the live broadcast. They watch as Jihan desperately tends to Seiya, and place the blame for this entire incident on Ito Ryuhei, who inflicted such stress upon her with that cruel letter. Now that he possesses a valid excuse to depart, Jihan immediately concludes the entire event, using his niece's delicate health as a pretense to leave. He then helps her to her feet, and she confirms her desire to return to the penthouse to rest. As they are departing, Takeda still tries to approach him. He offers his card and asks if they can be formally introduced later. Jihan doesn't even spare the card a single glance. He uses force to snatch it from the man's grasp and rip it to shreds, right in front of him. That is Jihan's final answer to any meeting with Takeda, and that decision is not changing. The recruitment leader of the fourth greatest guild in the entire world was just publicly humiliated by a lowly Korean bronze player. There's no doubt that Takeda is now incredibly infuriated. He would be anyway, if he weren't such a creep. The man forces a bizarre smile and adjusts his necktie as he acknowledges that Jihan truly possesses genuine power, a power that can rip a business card tray from his hands and tear it to pieces in a mere instant. He is most definitely worth recruiting to Japan, just for that incredible power alone. And yet he remains a bronze-ranked player, which can only mean that he is a rising star, who will ascend to even greater heights in the future. Takeda is now even more determined to bring Jihan to his side, no matter what it takes. Meanwhile, in a corridor leading to the elevator, Seiya and her uncle share a high five for a masterful acting performance. Very well done. As they continue to chat down the lobby corridor, Jihan unexpectedly receives a sizable donation from someone, based on a message attached to the donation. It seems the sponsor is none other than Takeda, who went out of his way just to donate to Jihan, despite the fact he had already ended the broadcast. The way he addresses her is also far too creepy to Seiya, and Jihan seriously contemplates just blocking the man, despite the large sum of money he just received from him. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a voice calling out to both Jihan and Seiya. It's Hyen and her ever-present bodyguard, Gaia. She introduces herself as the third department, head of the powerful Divergent Guild. And although she appears professionally pleased to see him, Gaon does not look nearly as thrilled standing behind her. She apologizes for approaching him so suddenly, despite the very difficult circumstances. Jihan points out that she's not supposed to have been able to get inside, unless she was directly involved with the auction. But she still somehow managed to bypass all of the security. Jihan also recognizes that her voice sounds strangely familiar, almost as if he has encountered her somewhere before. Hyen explains she has incredibly deep ties with South Korea's BattleNet department, so it was her personal connections that helped her find her way inside. She has a tremendous amount of confidence in herself, and her brazen attitude almost comes across as shameless. Jihan is certain that he has met someone with that kind of demeanor before. As she continues speaking, he finally recalls exactly where he has seen her. She is an old companion from his past life who always concealed her face. Seiya notices the completely stunned expression on Jihan's face and mistakenly assumes it's because he has fallen for this new arrival. Jihan, on the other hand, needs to test out a new theory of his. He quotes something that he heard from her before in his past life, just to make sure. The world is full of possibility. It is very hard to ignore that this is a quote from the great writer Dostoevsky, who is known for his gambling addiction. He then asks her directly if she likes this quote. Gaeong instantly steps in front of Hyen protectively and demands to know who exactly Jihan is. Hyen's gambling problem is a secret known only to a select few, so an outsider should have no way of knowing about it. That is the last piece of confirmation that Jihan needed. This absolutely means that Hyen is America First manager. Zero. In his past life, she was the only other Korean in the guild besides him, and she was someone he knew, specifically for her love of both drinking and gambling. Despite all of that, though, she ascended to the second-string guildmaster due to her voice ability. This voice ability was originally a skill that could only grant experience buffs, but after the tutorial phase concluded, the growth potential of gift rankings and stats, as well as other game aspects, expanded exponentially. The voice ability became an incredibly valuable power, and the person who was the strongest among all voice users was Zero. In the present, though, Zero now, just Lee, Hyen can't help but cringe in utter pain as her gambling addiction is exposed to these two strangers. The Divergent Guild somehow managed to recruit both the Plum, Blossom, and Zero. That is a truly impressive roster for them to have, even during just the tutorial. Jihan quickly fabricates a story to cover up his knowledge of her habits by telling them that he saw her in one of his previous live broadcasts. He claims that the chat message she sent was quite memorable, and that's the only reason he had to ask. He then apologizes for having startled them. Hyen clears her throat awkwardly, hoping to move on from this highly embarrassing conversation as quickly as she possibly can. As they continue to speak, Jihan can't help but grin at her comical antics, and that only further convinces Seiya that he must be interested in her. Hyen then uses the now comfortable atmosphere to approach Jihan with far more confidence. She tells him she has a strong feeling that they will be seeing each other much more often. She then pulls out her phone and offers it to him. Her true goal is perfectly clear. She wants to invite him to the Divergent Guild, and she hopes the two of them can meet again in a more private setting. Seiya cannot stop herself from squealing at this new, romantic development. It seems like she's about to get a brand new aunt out of nowhere. Even Hyen believes that she has made a lasting impression on Jihan from the way she acted, and she casts a triumphant glance at Gaon, who was famously and publicly rejected by Jihan in the past. That entire act would have been absolutely perfect, if not for the unfortunate fact that Jihan still cannot recall what his own phone number is. He turns and asks Seiya if she can give him her number instead. But Seiya misinterprets the situation and thinks Jihan is just playing hard to get. That is simply not the case. But she falsely believes that Jihan has some kind of grand scheme and decides to assist him by pretending to be dizzy and sick again. After noticing that she must want to go back, Jihan apologizes to the two of them and asks Hyen for her business card instead, so that he can contact her at a later time. Then the uncle and niece resumed their walk to the penthouse, with Seiya falsely believing that her uncle has suddenly transformed into a playboy. Gaeong and Hyen begin to make their way out of the building, and the stoic bodyguard is visibly trembling. After the exchange, Hyen tells Gaeong to stop suppressing it and just laugh, since she's about to become extremely irritated. As Jihan and Seiya ride the elevator back up to the penthouse, Seiya remarks that she never imagined her uncle would wear her father's expensive clothes. Jihan can't really help it, though. since his own clothes no longer fit him. Besides, it's not as if the clothes themselves did anything wrong. The man is the problem, and as long as they look good on him, then it's perfectly fine. She then asks him about what he did earlier, telling a very pretty woman that he forgot his own phone number. Jihan has absolutely no idea what she's talking about, and seems genuinely perplexed by her question, as Seiya scolds him for pretending to forget his number. But then Jihan explains that he truly doesn't know his phone number, and he was not just playing hard to get. Later on, it's time for another grand mission to commence. And this one is yet another grueling tower defense mission, just like the last one. The objective is to guard the crystal and withstand a zombie mob. Jihan is not mentally prepared for this new mission, since he spent an eternity trying to console Seiya after she realized that she had accidentally sabotaged her uncle's chance at finding a new relationship. She wrongly assumed that Jihan was interested in Lee Hyen when he feels absolutely nothing romantic towards a gambler like her. Regardless of his personal feelings towards her though, he never imagined he would see Zero again like this. Back in his previous life, they had formed a very close friendship because they both hailed from the same home country. On their days off, they would also bet on sports just to pass the time. Zero was obsessed with wagers and would always continue, even if she had already lost multiple times in a row. It was during these close times together that he heard her use the very quote that she seems to be so fond of. She also bore a facial scar that she refused to have erased because she called it the price she paid for making a deal with the devil. They also had a great deal in common, despite being mere refugees, and it ultimately caused them to become true friends. The biggest thing they shared in common was overwhelming guilt, self-loathing, and the regret of failing to protect those they loved. Jihan lowers his head in sorrow as agonizing memories come flooding back into his mind. But the deluge of comments into his stream snaps him back to reality. They have also noticed the massive sword clutched in his hand, which has to be the first standard weapon he has brought to a mission since he began his journey into battle. This weapon is the C-rank Pontiff's horse-slaying sword, and despite being only C-rank, Jihan managed to acquire it for an unexpectedly low price. Now that he's actually holding it, though, you can see the exact reason why it was so cheap. It is far too large and heavy for most people to wield, but for him, it's quite easy for him to use. He swings the massive sword to become more comfortable with it, and his viewers are obviously in awe of his apparent combat ability. They demand that he show them his status window so they can finally learn what his class and stats truly are. It seems he has a large number of people watching, so they're starting to make more demands of him. Right now, he already has 12,000 live viewers. Jihan is not sure. He wants to reveal his status window to the public just yet, but he cannot simply ignore them since they are his regulars. He decides to be completely straightforward about it, since so many people are intensely curious, and he activates his mic to address them all directly. He tells them that he will reveal his entire status window if they can get his channel to the milestone of 200,000 subscribers. That is a massive feat to accomplish, since he only has 10,000 currently. But he gives them his word that he will do it once he reaches 200,000. But then, to make the proposition more interesting, he adds yet another condition to it so that they won't complain about it too much. He tells them that if he fails to achieve first place in any game from now on, then he will reveal his status window the moment he loses. The deal has the exact intended effect. And now, everyone seems far more invested in the challenge than before. They all believe that Jihan's little game will be over as soon as he gets matched with a troll player. Right on cue, the remaining 3 players are summoned as well. The moment Jihan lays eyes on them, he cannot believe his absolutely terrible luck. Of all the people to get, he had to get the 3 worst possible people he could be paired with, all at the same time. The first is the sparkly child that Jihan mercilessly annihilated not too long ago, and the second is the mage, who Jihan treated like a personal stress relief toy in his very first defense mission. The only person on this team that has not been murdered by Jihan, Diego Mazid, Argentina's top player before Jihan's regression. At this moment, Diego is not much to look at, and he looks incredibly fragile, while also sporting a messy beard. But on top of that, there is also something strange going on. Shiny is the warrior, and Kim Do-hyuk is the mage, while Jihan is the support. That would mean that Diego is the archer. In Jihan's past life, Diego was a mage, so something peculiar must have occurred. Kim Do-hyuk is not too thrilled about this matchup either. Thanks to Jihan eliminating him last time, he lost both his skill and his rewards from the last mission. Then, without warning, Someone named Sword King Family 898 registers a reward mission. The mission objective is to destroy the crystal and prevent Song Jihan from achieving first place. And the reward, just as it was with Golden Light, is an absolutely absurd sum of money. The game commences, and Diego immediately goes on the offensive. He begins to decimate the zombies with his soccer ball, actually quite impressively, managing to knock each zombie off the tower with incredibly precise shots. He then instructs Jihan to give him more support buffs, so that he can obtain even more power. Jihan hasn't possessed enough stats to use support skills before, so he never even attempted it. But now that his divine power has increased, perhaps he can finally try to use it. He now grants a powerful strength buff, and that also proves that he must be a support since he is able to give out buffs. But that only makes his viewers even more confused about what his true class actually is. Then, before he begins the real fight, he asks Kim Do-hyuk if he's prepared to play properly this time. Golden Light, who is still attempting to be Jihan's #1 fanboy, is curious as to whether Jihan and Kim Do-hyuk know one another. Right now, however, the mage has no other choice, and it's likely that if he acts difficult once more, then Jihan will simply throw him away yet again. The mage has no option but to play nice. And with that, Jihan leaps from the tower to engage the zombies directly. Diego's first impression of Jihan is that he is completely insane, and the mage most definitely agrees with that assessment. He does not like Jihan one bit, and he especially dislikes the fact that Jihan seems to be treating him like some kind of lowly underling. The mage has had enough. If Jihan is going to go around doing whatever he pleases, then he should also be able to go around and do whatever he wants, right? Jihan plummets straight into the pit of undead monstrosities, with a fireball already charged in his palm and ready to detonate, with his newly awakened pool of mana, as well as his divine power that increased after they fused together to create force. A small horde of the undead is nothing for our MC. He unleashes a scorching rain of divine fire upon the zombies below him. Then, as he lands, he pivots with his comically large sword and slams it directly into the ground, unleashing a shockwave so immense that it obliterates everything within a small radius. Even Diego can hardly believe that a bronze support can be this powerful, while Goldie just marvels in sheer awe at the man who once beat him to a pulp on 2 separate occasions. This entire series of incredible feats is being broadcast live, and some in the audience begin to speculate that Jihan might have already slain 100 zombies with just that single attack. Next up are the blood zombies, which are much larger and far tougher than the regular cannon fodder Jihan just dealt with. They charge at him, but unexpectedly run into an invisible barrier that they cannot seem to pass through. That's because Jihan is now testing the true, authentic value of the space-controlling ability, Force. With it, he is able to generate an absolute territory, which is a sophisticated way of saying that he can restrict the movements of anything that is unlucky enough to step inside that territory. And in some cases, he can even dominate their very movements. Most people have no knowledge of this power, but Jihan is intimately familiar with it. In his past life, Baron, whose control over Force was a complete mess, always used Jihan as his personal training partner. The two of them would spar repeatedly, and because of this, Jihan often came face to face with Baron's overwhelming force, and was able to completely comprehend all of its abilities. Right now, Jihan is an absolute existence, who can wield mana and divine power at the same time, while also having access to both force and martial power. In terms of raw, game-breaking hacks alone, Jihan stands head and shoulders above anyone in the Bronze League. In less than a minute after landing in the horde of zombies, Jihan has already eliminated well over 100 of them. The last time he had a defense mission, he was unable to clear the 1,000 kills quest, but this time, he's confident that he can definitely achieve it. He just needs to move a little bit faster, and he should be able to get it done. With each swing of his massive weapon, dozens of zombies are felled at once with absolute ease. And to everyone else watching this entire scene is nothing short of absurd. His viewers can now finally understand why he so confidently declared that he will continue to get first place in every single match going forward from now on. The only problem now is getting him to 200,000 subscribers so they can finally see his status window. The rest of them can only stand by and observe as Jihan carries the entire team so effortlessly. But one person in particular is being suspiciously quiet. Do-hyuk grins with a menacing look and the viewers realize that something is definitely very wrong. They urge Golden Light to turn around and check on the mage, and Goldie immediately understands what has happened. Doohyuk stands right beside the crystal they are supposed to be protecting, with a sinister fireball in his hand. His dark intentions are crystal clear, and it appears as though he's about to do something crazy. But just before he acts on it, he wants to take a moment to taunt Jihan, who is still busy fighting off the zombies. Now that he feels like he is in the clear, he unleashes all his anger and frustration that has been building up towards Jihan, hurling vile insults at the man, and then eventually insulting his niece, Seiya, as well. Even the mindless zombies stop fighting and begin to tremble as they realize that this is an incredibly bad idea. Jihan remains deathly quiet as Doohyuk continues to hurl insults and accusations about Seiya, going so far as to imply that Jihan has done something horrible to Seiya to make her so obedient. The 55,000 GP reward that compelled Doohyuk to do something so foolish is the result of the Sword King family, who harbored a deep grudge against Song Jihan. If those points were converted into real money, it would be the equivalent of about 55 million and won. And that absurd number is more than enough fuel to give Kim Doohyuk the reckless courage to do what he's doing right now. Jihan can also see right through the mage's pathetic actions, and his intuition tells him there can only be two reasons why someone so cowardly would suddenly act up. All of a sudden, either someone is behind him or someone is encouraging him to do this. He must believe that since Jihan is far away, he can swiftly destroy the crystal and then escape without any dire consequences. Jihan truly doesn't care about any insults directed towards him, but mentioning Seiya is a line that he will ensure no one ever crosses again. The day he regressed and met Seiya once more, he could not help but recall the horrific nightmare that had become his reality. In order to conceal a scar that was inflicted upon her due to a terror incident by the Sword King family, she hid her face away in bandages. And by the time he finally found her, her body was already cold and completely lifeless. Back then, he could do absolutely nothing for her and could only weep with her lifeless body in his arms. Now that he has returned with the power to alter the future, Jihan decided that he would never allow that to happen again, and that he would protect Seiya from anyone who ever tries to hurt her, from the flaming ki emanating from his body. The viewers can tell that Jihan is furious, and even they can recognize that mentioning his family is definitely crossing a sacred line. However, that does not change the fact that he is still far too distant from the crystal to do anything to prevent this. At least, that is what they all think. Today, you will make sure that everyone remembers what happens when you mess with Seiya. The moment he acquired force, there was something that he realized. While attempting to unite the three Dantians, he realized that he can use the nameless divine arts. His martial power is not yet at level 30, so Jihan can only imitate it. But right now, that is all that he needs. The moment he gathered the three powers into one, he felt a sensation similar to when he used the nameless divine arts. All he has to do is feel the electricity starting from his feet, then channel it throughout the rest of his body, feeling himself become a living thunderbolt. From there, he just has to launch himself off the ground, and he can move with lightning-fast speed using a technique called the Flashing Sky Thundersteps, which is a method to break the very sky. The Sword King family realizes that Jihan is moving, and they warn the mage to hurry and destroy the crystal quickly before he can damage the precious crystal. His other teammates rush over to try and stop him. Doohyuk pushes Goldie back with a fireball before he can get too close. Then the mage charges up an even more powerful fireball, but it's intercepted by a football. Before it can ever make contact with the crystal, the mage demands to know what Diego thinks he's doing, but the star soccer player is always serious about any game he plays, and right now, he's stopping the mage from ruining their game. More than that, Doohyuk also cursed out one of their own team members, and even went as far as to curse his entire family. That is something that cannot be ignored. Doohyuk turns to begin arguing with Diego, but it is far too late for him to do anything else. Jihan has arrived, and he does not look happy at all with the fact that the mage seems to have a lot to say. With nothing left to do in this situation but talk, he decides to try and insult Jihan a little bit more. But our MC is tired of hearing his worthless voice and uses force to literally shut his mouth. Originally, Jihan wanted to just blow up the guy's head the moment he got back, but that would be far too merciful. Instead, He wants to dish out a small punishment first before letting him off. Every player has their pain filtered through a special connector. And even if Jihan kills the mage, the only penalty he'll face is going down by a single level. So instead, Jihan will inflict damage so brutal that the mage will think twice before ever daring to do something like this again. Do-hyuk smiles in utter relief, since he knows that there is nothing that Jihan can do to actually inflict any pain, as long as he is logged in through his connector. On top of that, he's already lost all of his skills, so there's nothing more for Do-hyuk to possibly lose. At least, that's what he foolishly thinks. Until Jihan places a hand on the man's shoulder, and he starts to feel an unimaginable, searing pain. The man shrieks in agony, and Jihan tells him to calm down, because things are only just beginning for the two of them. The man's horrific screams continue to echo throughout the entire game map, and whatever Jihan is doing is causing him unimaginable torment. The other two watch Jihan's cold cruelty in action, but they can't comprehend why the mage is feeling so much pain. Usually, the battle connector should make it so that nothing hurts, enough to make a person react quite like that. But Diego quickly deciphers the trick. As Jihan is breaking down the mage's body, he is also providing continuous healing with his other hand. This allows Jihan to exploit a bug within the system, where if a support keeps using recovery skills on an ally that is taking damage over time from things like poison or burns, then an overload effect occurs. And during this time, a player can feel 100% of all the damage that the connector misses. Whatever Jihan is doing, it looks seriously painful and sparkly. Can only wonder what kind of terrifying skill Jihan is using to induce so much pain. What Jihan is actually doing is using his force to rip muscles and fracture bones. Only a few martial artists among those skilled in martial arts can use this terrifying skill. It sends an unknown energy deep into a target's body that destroys them completely from the inside out. Do-hyuk cannot understand what is happening, since his connector should be filtering out all of the pain. But for him, it feels like his entire body is being stabbed with countless needles and violently shaken around. He does not want to continue feeling this pain. Han, begging for the sweet release of death. Without a moment's hesitation, Jihan obliges the coward's desperate request, severing his head from his shoulders with a single clean strike. But the moment the fool's body vanishes, Jihan's cold eyes are already scanning for the revival location. The instant he materializes once again, Jihan's brutal lesson in pain resumes. And this time, the agony is so intense that Do-hyuk's very consciousness shatters, dying from shock. At this point, the cruel spectacle has gone on for so long that his global audience is beginning to feel uneasy watching. When Do-hyuk respawns again, he wastes no time and immediately begins groveling for his miserable life as Jihan stalks menacingly towards him. This has gone on for far too long. It is Seiya who must intervene to stop her uncle from doing something drastic. She warns that if he continues this excessive punishment, he's going to end up losing all of his loyal subscribers. For now, he needs to suppress his rage and concentrate on the game instead. Jihan's thirst for vengeance has not yet been satisfied, but for Seiya's sake, he will halt his punishment here. This is, after all, an era of peace, and the brutal lesson he has delivered should be sufficient to set an example for anyone else who dares to foolishly push his limits. Before he puts the wretched mage out of his misery, though, Jihan must know who sent him on such a suicidal quest. The mage does not waste a single moment. He reveals that the one who sponsored him to do this is someone operating under the username Sword King Family 8. 98. The Sword King family kept sponsoring him again and again, and because of that, he became lost in the promise of money and acted with utter stupidity. As much as that aligns with what he knows about the Sword King's family, it is highly improbable that a single person could wager as much as 50,000 GP. That makes it more likely that it isn't just one person, but an entire clandestine organization that orchestrated this. Now that he has the answers he requires, he grabs the pathetic mage by his collar. He snarls that he should be thankful that Seiya stopped him from going any further. Then, as Jihan launches him into the sky towards his final death, the mage screams out his thanks to Seiya for halting his torment. With that, Hyuk has died for the last time and is eliminated from the game for his splendid display of torture and the top-class disposal of a troll. Golden Light and Diego both award Jihan 10 points each. Now that the garbage has been taken care of, Jihan must ascend and eliminate more of the zombie horde. From his own memory, he recalls killing at least 920 zombies. He should be able to easily kill 80 more in the blink of an eye. However, when he opens his status window to check his progress, he has already completed the entire linked quest. This is due to the thunder from his flashing sky. Thunder steps. The residual electricity from his takeoff supercharged the ground and zapped the surrounding zombies, causing him to kill just enough to clear the quest. If anything, this occurred because he failed to control the power, and the dispersed energy simply exploded, which ultimately caused this unintended result. He did not use the true power of the nameless divine arts, and only utilized the 3 dantians, so his execution was far from perfect. However, the results were more than good, so he cannot truly complain for the time being. He just needs to train more to get a better grasp of his skills. Goldie tries to cozy up to Jihan and asks if he's going down again, so that the two of them can fight together. But our MC ignores him completely and instead approaches Diego. He thanks the legendary soccer star for helping to protect the crystal while he was making his way back over to it, and even offers to meet up with the man later on, so he can be repaid for his efforts properly. On top of all that, he also has a great deal that he wishes to discuss with the man. Their friendly conversation is cut short by a sudden, violent earthquake. It feels as though something massive is trying to break through the earth, and nothing like this has ever occurred before. Goldie observes that it feels like something is about to explode, and Diego notices something horrifying emerging in the distance. It appears to be a giant hand with a gaping mouth breaking through the ground. This is a completely new monstrosity that even Jihan has never witnessed before, and it looks incredibly ominous and powerful. The zombies seem to have a newfound vigor now that this new monster has appeared, and things look as though they are about to get truly chaotic as the zombies begin to charge towards them. The monster hand roars, and the sound even causes Jihan to freeze. However, it doesn't seem like the zombies are being powered up by the hand. Instead, it looks like the monster is chewing up and devouring the zombies. Then the mushed up undead in its mouth is turned into a living goo that falls to the floor and grows into a completely new monster. One that isn't even supposed to appear in a bronze level map. It's a flesh golem. And it's a monster that usually only shows up in gold level maps or higher. It appears the evil beast is creating these new monstrosities by dismantling their physical bodies and then recombining them. Jihan wonders if this is because of the linked quest, and he opens his status window to investigate. The linked quest Zombie Origin 1 has been changed to Zombie Origin 2, and now his next objective is to deal with the flesh golem without the aid of the crystal. Jihan doesn't understand what it means by without the help of the crystal, but before he can even figure it out, he receives a new system notification informing him that he has received a special bonus mission. The other players have also received this quest, and they're just as confused as Jihan is about the entire thing. They cannot even imagine having to fight this massive creature, but the system has clearly given them the objective to defeat. It also names the massive beast as the disciple of destruction, called Blackhand. They also unlock the blessing of the crystal, which allows them to lessen the massive gap in strength, enough for them to have a fighting chance to fight back. Even Goldie, who is as powerful as a Gold League player, isn't certain that they can actually win this battle. In fact, he informs Jihan that even gold level players like him struggle with these types of special quests. It is definitely not a mission that they are expected to clear. Otherwise, they would not be offering such incredible rewards. The system is offering him 10,000 achievement points, as well as a unique crystal fragment. It is rare for the system to offer him a reward that is not just mere achievement points, which means that this must be at least an epic level quest. Goldie resigns himself completely to his fate and then advises Jihan that he should receive the crystal's blessing first, but our MC flatly refuses. Then he picks up his massive sword and prepares to launch towards the flesh golem that is already targeting their precious crystal. A flesh golem is an undead monster with unbelievable vitality. You can only defeat one by destroying the core that lies at the center of its grotesque body. However, even that is incredibly difficult since it has a truly huge body, and crystal fragments are embedded all throughout. Above all else, even at the gold level, the flesh golem is considered a boss level monster, and even if Jihan has surpassed the strength of a bronze level player, this is not a situation that can be dealt with so easily. He commands the other two to move aside. Then he leaps into the air using his flashing sky thunder steps, leaving behind a footprint crackling with violent lightning behind him as he makes his way directly towards a monster. He recalls the most basic and fundamental skill in the nameless, divine arts, which is the 3 talents, martial devotion, these profound martial arts, which were created based on heaven. Earth and humanity have 3 core meanings. Those fundamental meanings make up the entire nameless divine arts. And with his understanding of those meanings, Jihan is able to activate a new ability called 3 talents, martial devotion, cleanly slicing through the flesh golem with a single devastating strike. The impact from his attack is strong enough that he is able to completely break through the monster's sturdy flesh and obliterate the core in just 1 hit. The attack is so impressive that Diego drops his football in total shock, and the system announces that Jihan has dealt with the flesh golem and cleared the bonus mission of the 4th tower. The instant Jihan swung his powerful sword, Golden Light felt a complicated new emotion, one which is very difficult to put into words. However, all the emotions he felt at once can be easily described as raw, unfiltered admiration. Goldie falls to his knees in utter exhaustion as Diego continues to watch on in shock. He has never felt a sensation like this before. At first, Sparkly just wanted someone to turn into streaming content. But now, he desires more than just something as pathetic as that. He wants to document all of Jihan and watch him grow to reach the very top as a player and a streamer. But apart from Golden Light's powerful new decision to put his entire body and heart on the line, for Jihan, this single moment also marks the beginning of Song Jihan and Diego's unique relationship. Platonic, of course. This is not that kind of manga. Jihan managed to quickly and easily take out the flesh golem, but the other towers are not having quite as grand of a time. With just 1 hit, the flesh golem easily destroyed the 3rd tower, ending their bonus mission abruptly. And the other towers as well are now facing a very similar fate. Meanwhile, Jihan's group is ready and preparing to log out because they successfully managed to clear the bonus mission. They will be awarded triple the experience and GP. The rewards are truly plentiful. But there is one more thing that Jihan needs to do now that he has been given the chance. He suggests that he and Diego should see each other on the outside. Diego initially declines the offer, since getting the bonus is a good enough repayment for him. But Jihan has other, grander plans in mind. He wants to give Diego more information about his true skill. That statement shocks the soccer player, and Jihan gives him a cryptic hint to make him even more interested, telling him that he needs to become a mage. However, it would be boring if everything was explained right now. So Jihan offers to meet him somewhere else so they can continue the conversation over a nice meal. If it were anyone else that told Diego this stunning news, they wouldn't even be worthy of a response. But since it's Song Jihan who just displayed unbelievable power, Diego could not help but feel intrigued by his words. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Diego sends Jihan a discreet private message, and the two of them make plans to meet up later for a meal to discuss these matters. Goldie overhears their conversation and begs Jihan to invite him along too. But Jihan isn't interested in the sparkly streamer in the slightest. And more importantly, this meal is supposed to be for the sake of repaying Diego. Goldie continues to plead and even offers to become his official editor. But Jihan isn't interested and simply logs out while the streamer is still begging him for an opportunity. Back in his private room in the Sword Palace, Jihan checks his rewards for clearing the second linked quest. He receives 10,000 achievement points and a crystal fragment. But things are not yet over, and he will receive the next linked quest called Traces of the Disciple once he ascends to the Silver League. It's a good thing that he acquired Force. But the crystal fragment is more disappointing than he had expected it to be. It's a single-use B-rank item that grants the player a divine blessing. It can also only be utilized in bronze or silver zones. A divine blessing is something that only the peak of support users, like the legendary Saintess, can use. It is a high-level buff that raises all abilities by a staggering 50%, and it is considered a must-have in the upper levels. However, the fact that it is a one-use item that can only be used in the lower levels is incredibly disappointing. However, the other plentiful rewards more than make up for it. For one, he leveled up 3 times and obtained 6,000 GP because of his triple reward buff from clearing the last bonus mission. Now he is level 13, and both his martial power and force are at level 17. There are only 12 levels left until the silver promotion game, so his current levels are already unbelievably high enough. Jihan wonders if there are any other players who have advanced at this incredible speed before. Meanwhile, the otherworldly divine item that he used in the tower defense mission begins to react. Since he fulfilled the item's difficult requirements, his divine power rises by 2, and it combines with force. However, even though he has used up the weapon's power, and it is devolving from C rank all the way down to E rank, his stats are not increasing. It seems that divine power and force are not directly proportional. Suddenly, the ancient sword begins to glow with a brilliant light. The power of the 3 dantians that he used within the sword is now leaking out, and it appears it could not withstand his powerful attack. It would be far too dangerous to just let the power leak out, so Jihan must absorb it all back into his own body. The turbulent process fills his room with a bright and blinding light that even escapes to the outside. Meanwhile, in a building right next to the Sword Palace, relaxing inside an unsuspecting hotel room, the Neo Self-Defense Forces recruiter, who recently went by the alias Sword King Family 98, can't help but feel depressed that his plans have failed. He was the one that registered the mission on the mage to force Jihan into losing the brutal competition. But despite his elaborate plans to see Jihan's status window, he still was not able to obtain what he wanted. He originally wanted to use the mage's deep resentment of Jihan, as well as the animosity of the Sword King family, to his advantage, since things have not yet settled down since the Sword King departed. For now, he needs to stop meddling with the game by pretending to be part of the Sword King family. It would have been wonderful if things had succeeded in one go, but it seems he chose a pathetic player to do his dirty work. For him, things would have worked out if the mage had just destroyed the crystal immediately, instead of taking a moment to needlessly fool around. At the rate things are currently going, he might end up losing his one opportunity to bring Jihan over to Japan. As the recruitment manager of the Neo Self-Defense Force, Takeda Kazuo realized instantly that Jihan is a talented player, and he needs to recruit him, using his long and storied experience of recruiting talented players. However, his superiors within the company would only move and make decisions after clear information, and hard evidence had been presented. They asked him for evidence that Takeda's intuition about this bronze player is spot on, and he's going to need to do something to back up his position. In order to do that, Takeda needed to see Jihan's actual status window, which would provide undeniable proof that Jihan is a strong player, worthy of Japan's immense interest. But things have gone on too long, and Takeda is now running out of time. He needs to up the ante and bring out the big guns in order to ensure that he can obtain Sung Jihan's status window. Once that finally happens, he will receive permission from the company to use the same special method they used to acquire the Sword King. Back with Jihan, he has somehow managed to absorb the overflowing power from the sword, and has even raised his divine power by 1 whole level. This time, however, his force level has actually increased. From this, he can deduce that every 3 levels of divine power equals 1 whole level for force. Additionally, since his martial power is connected directly to force, it has also increased by 1 point, bringing both stats to level 18. It is a shame that the weapon has been lost, but the benefits he gained from its destruction have made up for it. But the system is not yet finished, and it tells him that since the value of force has now exceeded 17, he can only absorb divine power from A-rank divine items or higher. That is a huge handicap, since A-rank divine items are incredibly difficult to find. Seiya bursts into the room to happily tell her uncle that she just received a 50 billion won deposit. Her joy is cut short, though, when she sees the state of the room and Jihan. He tries to play it all off, but the fountain of blood on his forehead begs to differ. Seiya ignores his feeble attempts to placate her and drags him toward the washroom so she can properly apply medicine to his wounds. Jihan just obediently follows along with her as she continues to scold him, a warm smile on his face. Later on, after he gets his wounds properly bandaged up, the two of them head out to a restaurant to eat with the money they have now received. After spending an entire decade in the U.S., he really missed eating some good pork belly in a familiar and comfortable Korean atmosphere. It's the very first time he has been able to eat a proper meal since he regressed. It's not back to eating out once in a great while, but Jihan just wants to return to the food he is familiar with. Seiya insists that she will be paying, so he should ask for something much better and more expensive. Jihan just casually waves his hand and tells her that they're going to eat all their meals together anyway, so they can have fancier food on some other occasion. But Seiya tells him they won't be eating together for much longer. She has decided that she will go back to school, and although she may not look the part, she is still the acting student council president. So it is strange for her to have such a long absence from school. The teacher already informed her that she can rest for another week, but it's almost a day to get the blessing from the gift room, so she cannot afford to rest for too long. The gift room is something that everyone gets to experience on their 18th birthday. Seiya's birthday is on August 22nd, and even in these truly hellish times, Seiya still waited eagerly for that day. Seiya, who had wanted to be blessed in the Academy's own gift room, had desperately hoped that she would get a good gift, one that would make her entire situation better. That tiny hope fell apart when Seiya received an F-rank gift. That was the exact moment where the strong-willed Seiya finally broke down. He cannot tell her that she's going to receive an F-rank gift, though. So for now, he should just try to manage her expectations. She will be starting school the next day, since it's a Monday, so she can get a completely fresh start. Jihan offers to be her personal driver to and from school, and although she tries to argue against it, Jihan has already made his final decision on the matter. She frowns and pointedly turns away from him. But even though she tries to make it look like she is upset, she cannot conceal the joy on her face at his decision. The next day, early in the morning, the two head down to the Sword Palace's parking lot, only to discover that all the cars are gone. The Sword King had a vast assortment of sports cars and supercars, but now the entire place is completely empty. It seems their greedy relatives sold them all without their knowledge. Seiya decides to just take the public bus, but Jihan notices that a car has been left behind. The only vehicle remaining is Seiya's mother's car, and it looks as though they couldn't earn much from it, so they simply abandoned it. Luckily for them, the door is unlocked and the keys are still inside. Despite its old and rather beat-up appearance, the car still manages to roar to life. Seiya panics a little at the fact that they are going in that car, and Jihan thinks she's embarrassed to be seen in such an old car, but she tells him that she is actually worried. He asks her what she could be worried about, but he gets his answer when they arrive at the school and are told to move by a tall, angry-looking bald man. They are at Gangnam-gu Battle Net Academy, which is where Seiya is a student. And in the parking lot, it appears this man is trying to pick a fight with them, simply because Jihan is driving a cheap-looking car. He tries to tell them to move, and even calls Jihan a beggar, causing our MC to calmly exit the vehicle and tell the man that he should watch his tongue. The other people standing around them quickly recognize Jihan as the infamous Bronze Killer, and they immediately take out their phones to record the interaction so they can stream it live on the internet. Elsewhere at the Divergent Guild headquarters, Hyen immediately gets up and tells Gaeong to follow her the moment she sees the video and knows where Jihan is. This time, she's going to make sure that Jihan will not look down on her anymore. Back with Jihan, the man continues to provoke Jihan and then eventually draws his massive fist back to attack. Jihan makes absolutely no attempt to block and instead uses force to stop the fist before it can connect with his face. Then, before the man can even speak, Jihan forcibly shuts his mouth and slams him to the ground in a kneeling position. As Jihan calmly scolds the man for his sheer bullheadedness, Seiya comes around the other side of the car and warns her uncle that people are now watching them. Then from the expensive car that the man drove earlier, a young girl around Seiya's own age sticks her head out of the window and calls out to Seiya. Her name is Kim Heezu, and she is the vice president at BattleNet Academy. It seems that this person is actually Seiya's friend, and she hops out of the car to greet Seiya. As she steps out of the car, she asks her personal driver why he is on the ground, and he lies that it's because it's very slippery. Heezu ignores her driver's attempt to apologize and asks Seiya where all of the supercars from before have gone. She admits that her own father sold all the cars, and Heezu becomes even more concerned. She tells Seiya that she should have contacted her in that situation. Then she promises to give Seiya a ride to school from now on. The action and her offer are both so sudden, and Seiya cannot hide her utter shock at the sudden offer. But Heezu continues to insist on it, and even offers to tell her own father about it. Jihan quietly observes the interaction, but something doesn't feel quite right. He doesn't remember anyone being so close to Seiya in his past life. Later on, Hyen and Gaeong finally make it to the BattleNet Academy. Not even up to 10 minutes after the video that showed Jihan went up, but he is nowhere to be found. A worker confirms that Jihan got into his car and left much earlier, and that causes Hyen to worry even more. She's worried that foreign scouts might also come for him, and she wants to snatch him up before they do. Gaeong stops Hyen from biting her nails and tells her to calm down. And the other woman is forced to accept the situation and think up a completely new plan. She failed to find him this time, but from now on, she will chase him live until she finally finds him. As she walks away, she watches the ongoing match that Jihan is in right now. As for the match itself, the results are already quite obvious. Jihan has an overwhelming lead against the rest of the players, and he is beating them all down almost too easily. With his nameless divine arts, as well as his martial arts skill, he is able to very easily take down all of his opponents. He is practicing how to focus his senses and adjust quickly to any new situations, and it appears to be working out in his favor. He cracks his knuckles and shifts his attention to his next targets. And there are people who have already been beaten down by Jihan before. Song Jihan is already known as the man who defeated a flesh golem with just a single strike. For any Bronze League players matching up with him, it is essentially the same as a natural disaster that is utterly impossible to prepare for. The game finally ends, and once again, Jihan has come in first place. He has also now come in first place 5 consecutive times, and the system rewards him with a 200% increase in his experience and GP gain. He also reaches the vaunted level 15, which unlocks the dungeon map as his next available area. The dungeon is a game type that opens up from level 15, and unlike the rest of the game, where you just need to fight, dungeons have different traps, mazes, and puzzles that must be cleared to proceed. However, unlike all of the other game modes, this one is co-op, and there is a strict limit to how far one person can go alone. Even on BattleNet, they recommend that cooperating with party members is a necessary part of playing within the dungeon mode. However, there are too many people after him now, and if he ends up being partied with people who want to screw him over, then there is nothing he can do about it. He briefly considers the idea of joining a guild, but changes his mind not long after that. He does not want to be there for very long, and the guild will be annoying when he eventually asks to leave. Besides, he will reach silver soon, and once he reaches silver, then he will simply create his own guild. Later that day, it's finally time for dinner, and Jihan calls for Seiya to go and set the dining table. The food is all prepared, and the two of them sit down to eat. Seiya is surprised that Jihan can cook so incredibly well, but Jihan honestly just threw together the ingredients they had to create a basic meal. She completely freaks out over how good the food is, and Jihan tells her that he will cook a proper meal for her next time. He used to cook a meal for himself every day when he lived in America, so he is already well accustomed to being in the kitchen. As they continue to eat, Jihan asks Seiya if she will be getting a ride from her friend. Often from now on, Seiya tells him she does not want to ride in her car, because during the entire duration of the trip, Hizu overreacted and made her feel very uncomfortable. She kept on showing uncomfortable levels of concern and asking very personal questions. And eventually, it became far too much for Seiya to handle. Jihan immediately understands and realizes that being with that girl must truly suck. There's another reason, though, and it is because her mom's car is much more comfortable and filled with a sense of warmth. Jihan also agrees with that. The very next day, Jihan takes her to school, and this time, there are a lot of scouts and reporters waiting for them. After their very flashy outburst from the previous day, it is no wonder that so many people are interested in seeing him. At this point, they are practically his personal stalkers. Thankfully, the school's security is doing a very good job of keeping them back and out of the official school's premises. As they drive into the parking lot, they see 2 familiar faces eagerly waiting for them. It's Hyen and Gaeong. She's even more incensed because she had already presented him her card, but he never even bothered to reach out. The harsh reality, however, was that he had completely forgotten her. This time, however, she is ensured that there is absolutely no path for escape. She leads him to the school's secluded garden rooftop, the perfect stage for a private, high-stakes negotiation. At least, it was meant to be private, if not for the pack of rival scouts camping just outside, desperately hoping for their own chance to speak with Jihan. Jihan observes that Hyen seems far more comfortable than before, and that's because she is a graduate of this very academy. But she is clearly far more agitated by his behavior. He offers a brief apology for forgetting her, but she coolly tells him that it's fine, calling it a rather refreshing change of pace. Jihan is the very first man who has ever made her run around and give chase, so she has prepared a treatment befitting such an effort. She presents him a platinum-grade contract right on the spot, a legendary offer with benefits beyond belief. It is such a momentous deal that the other recruiters immediately prepare to retreat home. Even Jihan is stunned by how much she must have prepared just for him. Then, she brazenly declares that a contract like this was only possible because it was her. Then, she leans in incredibly close to him and boldly tells him that these are her feelings for him. Her approach is so direct and shockingly effective that it causes the rest of the recruiters, who were clinging to a final shred of hope, to turn their backs and finally walk away. Even Jihan must concede that he's impressed by how far ahead she seems to have plotted all of this, as she intensely stares him down, trying to decipher his thoughts. Her close proximity allows him to catch the scent of her perfume. He recognizes it instantly. It's the same perfume that Zero always used, back when the two of them were close comrades. Now he is absolutely certain that Lee Hyen is, in fact, the very same Zero that he once knew. But now the next question is, if another one of her signature quirks is the same as he remembers. Hyen, tired of standing and trying to stare him down, finally drops back in her seat with an exasperated huff. At this point, she's visibly frustrated by the simple fact that she can't get any reaction from him. And on top of that, she has not even gotten his number yet. It seems as though she is the only one giving him things. Now, she is determined to get his phone number, no matter the cost. She informs him that after he reviews the contract, she will then need to put her official seal on it. So she is going to require his contact information. Her approach is far too obvious, though, and Jihan realizes instantly that she just wants his phone number. He doesn't reject her this time, however, and instead, he proposes that they should make a wager. He tells her about the fact that he just hit level 15, and, as they both know, the first game after hitting that milestone will always be a dungeon. Hyen can hardly believe that Jihan has already reached level 15. It has been less than a single month since he began actively participating in the BattleNet, and he has already ascended to such heights. But more importantly, even in a situation such as this, he is actually trying to make a bet with her. It makes absolutely no sense, but she does not turn it down, and instead asks what his betting conditions are. The terms are quite straightforward. He wants to enter the BattleNet at this very moment, and if he fails to secure first place, then he will sign a formal contract with the Divergent Guild, and of course, he will give her his phone number as well. That sounds incredibly risky, since it is well known that many people are now targeting it. If he jumps into his first ever dungeon game by himself, without a pre-made party or a guild, then he will be forced to play with complete randoms. This offer is almost too good to be true for Hyen, and it's quite frightening that he can just propose something like this out of thin air. She does not refuse him and asks him what he desires from her if she loses the bet. His request is simple. It's the final piece of the puzzle he needs to fully confirm Hyen's true identity. He tells her that he wants to see her entire status screen. Once he sees it, he can finally check if she has the same gift of nurturing as Zero. At this time, the nurturing gift was considered just an experience buff, which makes it a very embarrassing gift to show to others. And seeing her hesitant reaction pretty much confirms his suspicions. But he needs to verify things with his own two eyes and make absolutely sure that his intuition is correct. Just as he anticipated, she reluctantly agrees to the bet and warns him not to end up regretting his decision later on, since he plans to enter the BattleNet right away. She asks if he needs to move to a new location, but he does not need that. He enters the BattleNet instantly and also starts a BattleTube live broadcast as well, so they can watch him. Just as he expected, he spawns inside a dungeon called the Conqueror's Tomb. The Conqueror's Tomb is a high-level difficulty dungeon, where the legendary Conqueror himself now sleeps. Various different monsters appear in this dungeon, but lacks the complex puzzle features such as traps or mazes. However, there's a specific reason that the difficulty of this dungeon is so high. The only way to clear it is to ensure that every single member of the party survives until the very end, which means that getting fortunate with your teammates is paramount. Jihan materializes inside the dungeon, and his temporary teammates are also summoned right beside him. From what he can observe, these teammates don't look bad at all, and they instantly recognize who he is. From the looks of it, they're all in the same guild, and their equipment is pretty good too. They greet him with a lot of due respect and look genuinely happy to be working with him. One of the commentators recognizes the players as members of the Black Eagle Guild. They are generally known to be very considerate people, so it is likely that they will easily secure first place. The team also has a very laid-back air about them. Now that they have someone as incredibly powerful as Jihan on their team, they initially tell him that they will take the lead and that he can simply follow behind them. But Jihan refuses and decides to take the lead himself. They try to argue with him for a bit, but it's obvious that Jihan is incredibly dependable, so they eagerly agree to follow right behind him. Jihan is just relieved they're not trolls this time, and he was worried because of the clear conditions of this dungeon. Now he just has to focus on making sure that they all reach the end of the dungeon. They step into the first level, and the monsters already begin to spawn. The very ground seems to grow as the sand on the floor slowly morphs into powerful monsters, known as the Tomb Guards. The rest of his team enters into battle mode and asks how they should get into proper formation. But Jihan just needs them to stay safely behind him. He calmly walks into the room filled with the sand guards, and as soon as he enters, they try to take a swing at him, but he is able to easily dodge their attacks with no problem. He then returns the attack with just a simple punch, taking down one of the guards with a single, powerful hit. He continues this brutal onslaught, punching through the guards without any issues, and taking them all out with absolute ease before they are even able to properly attack him. In a matter of mere seconds, the room is completely clear, and he reminds his completely stunned teammates that they need to keep pace with him. In the Conqueror's Tomb, there are a total of 10 different pathways, and each team is randomly assigned to one single pathway. All of these pathways lead to the underground level 7, which contains the dungeon's final stage. Jihan's team was assigned to the 8th pathway, and they are currently holding an overwhelming lead. They're already down to level 3. And all his teammates have had to do this entire time is quietly trail along right behind Jihan. They have all heard rumors of how strong Jihan is, but seeing him in real life is truly a humbling experience. He is crushing the sturdy heads of these elite soldiers as if they are made of simple sand and easily clearing the path forward for them. This entire time, he hasn't even used a weapon yet, and yet he is displaying strength far beyond a normal Bronze League player. As he continues to push through the many levels, he receives a donation from a familiar and rather annoying username. It's Takeda, and he begs Jihan to check his mail for a big, fat donation. The strange way that the man talks makes even the professional commentators feel uncomfortable, and his true intentions are painfully clear. He wants to recruit Jihan to Japan, no matter what the cost. The commentators plead for Jihan not to leave Korea, since they cannot lose him too, after just recently losing the Sword King. Luckily for them, he has no intention of ever leaving Korea, and he even bans Takeda from his stream for making such lousy attempts to recruit him. Now, they're even finished with level 3, when the rest of the teams are probably still struggling to even clear level 1. One of the players tests the strength of a guard with his sword, and it has a durability as hard as solid metal. Yet Jihan is easily destroying them with just his bare fists. As the warrior checks the statue's durability, however, he receives a strange message that causes him to pause for a moment. The others continue their long trek down the towers, and the mage in the group apologizes for making Jihan do everything for them. He truly doesn't mind, and at this point, he is just happy that they are not trolling, like the rest of the people he has played with. They finally make it down to level 4, and this one appears to be a straight path. As Jihan carefully checks the area, another one of the players receives a message as well, and they pause to stare at it in total disbelief. Jihan can tell from the holes in the walls and the ground that they're all just deadly traps set for them. Usually, the Conqueror's Tomb has almost no traps, but it seems that is because they're all concentrated here. Jihan doesn't mind the traps, and asks them if it's alright for them to speed up a bit. Once again, he starts to take the dangerous lead, and tells them all to watch his back, as he makes his way through the deadly dungeon. As he walks on ahead, the archer and the warrior both pull out their weapons discreetly. They wait for him to start moving, and plan to kill themselves at the earliest given opportunity. The message they received was yet another attempt from the Sword King family to disrupt Jihan's current game by telling his teammates to kill themselves without being noticed, which would automatically sabotage Jihan's entire game. The guild members of the Black Eagle Guild all received the same exact quest from the very same Takeda, who was just recently banned from watching Jihan stream. Originally, the recruiter wanted to avoid using this particular method, but at this point, all he can use is money to try and get his way. Now that the stage has been finally set, the real question is what Jihan will do to prevent his inevitable loss, when there are several people that have now been bought out to make sure that he loses. On top of that, these people will not make it obvious, which means that the moment he takes off, he will fail almost immediately. There are no exceptions, and Takeda is sure to win. That is, unless a certain golden lad decides to step in and tip Jihan off. In advance, Jihan and the mage rush through the trap-filled room, and immediately, all the traps activate, sending several deadly arrows flying towards them. The mage tries to prepare a quick spell to get rid of the arrows, but Jihan already has a better plan to stop them. He activates his absolute territory, and the arrows all freeze in midair. The mage excitedly turns around to ask his teammates if they can also see what is currently going on, and that's when he finally notices the two of them turning their own weapons on themselves. The mage desperately calls for them to stop what they are doing, and that's enough of a warning for Jihan to turn around and notice what they are attempting to do. He activates his flashing sky. Thunder steps in the split second that the guys are confused from having been caught, and thanks to it, he is fast enough to stop them from doing anything drastic and knocks their weapons completely out of their hands. He then uses force to bind them securely to the ground, stopping their movements in their entirety. The mage runs back in from the trap-filled room to check if Jihan and his guild mates are alright. In their sheer panic, they both reveal the fact that they got a suicide mission from someone. If one of them manages to kill themselves, then the game would end immediately for them. The mage takes a moment to sincerely apologize to Jihan for the traitorous actions of his own guild members. But our MC is just relieved that he made it there in time to stop them from doing something incredibly stupid. But he knows that things are not over just yet. He uses his force ability to move the mage's own hand, right as a beam of light shoots out from it, narrowly stopping the mage from killing himself as well. The Black Eagle Guild all receive the same suicide quest, and the mage yells out in pure anger and asks Jihan how he knew that they all received the quest. After all, there's nothing that they did to make him suspect them. The person who alerted Jihan of his corrupted teammates was none other than Golden Light himself, who paid Jihan's absurdly high donation fee just to make sure that Jihan knew that his teammates had been bribed. Thanks to the fact that he is a die-hard fan, Goldie had been watching the broadcast in real time, and he had noticed that the other members all seemed to receive a strange-looking message, one by one. That's when he noticed the mission given out by Sword King Family 989 with an incredibly high reward of 1 billion won. So he had to make sure to inform Jihan, even though the donation message starts from 10 million and 1 won. But Jihan is more focused on how very strange this event seems to be, regardless of the grudge the Sword King family has against him. Spending 1 billion won on a single mission is just insane. Even if their very life is on the line, it's definitely not worth that much money. The conclusion is that whoever sent this mission is at least a named guild rank, or someone with the Sword King's special kind of influence. To think that they would give 1 billion yen just to check a single status screen is insane. So now the question is, who could have done such a thing? The commentators immediately realized that it must be Takeda. That's the only person who could do something so dirty, while also dropping a huge sum of money into it. Because of that, Jihan changes his original promise. Instead of revealing his status screen at 200,000 subscribers, he will now reveal his status screen at 1 million subscribers. However, even with that monumental change, his promise of placing first in every mission still remains the same, as he says that he picks up the warrior's sword and gets a special rope out from his inventory. It's a good thing that this all happened, because Jihan was worried that he would hit 200,000 subscribers far too soon. Thanks to all of this, he managed to gain some money as well as some new attention. Now, with the F-grade rope of restraint, it is time for him to take care of these betrayers that he has unluckily been paired up with. He has tied them up in a bunch like common livestock, and now drags them through the dungeon right behind him so he doesn't have to worry about them. Eventually, without any more major distractions, they are able to make it to the 6th level, just before they reach the Emperor's room. And it seems like this place is filled with a lot more tomb guards than anywhere else he has yet been. Jihan stares up into the oppressive darkness as hundreds of glowing eyes stare back down at him and warn him not to go any further. Before they finally made it here, Jihan continued to drag them across the hard floor. And to make sure that they didn't make too much noise, he also used force to completely close their mouths. As Jihan tied them up, one of the players even says that Jihan will make an enemy out of their powerful guild if he continues treating them in such a way. But the truth is that the Black Eagle Guild will most likely not want anything to do with trolls like them. Then lastly, to make sure that they do not struggle, Jihan used his finger to poke at all of their pressure points, causing the strength to leave their entire bodies. That is something that only an advanced level martial artist, which is an advanced warrior class, can possibly do. At this rate, they will be dragged around completely meaninglessly, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. The warrior recalls that Jihan is very sensitive about his niece, but before he can even utter a word, his mouth is shut tight with overwhelming force, stopping him from doing something incredibly stupid. As he drags them across the ground to make sure that they don't die, he passively heals them so that they do not die from the very rough treatment. Finally, they make it to the 6th floor, where they are confronted by multiple monsters hiding in the shadows. They're all the same clay soldiers that he fought before, and there are a lot of them. This time, however, Jihan is prepared for their attack. He parries a sword aimed at his now useless teammates. Then, to make sure that he is not distracted, he grabs his bunched up crew and tosses them to the center of the room. Now that he has absolutely no distractions, he sets off, clearing out the clay soldiers that are approaching them. Except, unlike before, after he slices them all down, the soldiers revive and thousands more emerge from the shadows. The fact that their eyes are now glowing means that they are now in berserker mode, right? Then a linked quest appears out of thin air and urges Jihan to kill all of the guards. It has been a while since he received a linked quest, and the last time was during the dangerous defense map, to make sure that his teammates are not attacked. While his back is turned, he places a shield over them to protect them. Then, to test how good it is, he smacks his powerful sword against it, confirming that it is sturdy enough to survive anything that the clay soldiers could possibly throw at. He also reinforces it with a force field made from his force power, creating a powerful double layer of protection. Now that he doesn't have to actively protect them, he can finally focus on going all out to take down these soldiers. He starts by using his absolute territory ability, stopping all of the soldiers before they can get too close to him. No matter how many times he uses this incredible ability, he cannot get over just how truly overpowered it is. All the movements of anyone who comes within this territory is absolutely slowed down. Then, with just his hands, he can overpower everything. It is a shame that Baron had such an amazing skill, but only used it to simply reinforce his mana. Now that he has the clay soldiers under his powerful territory, it's time for him to finally get this over with. With one massive attack, he sends all the soldiers flying and immediately clears the quest with absolutely no issues. With the 6th floor now taken care of, they finally proceed to the Grand Emperor's room. There, they meet the legendary Conqueror, who is the reason that all party members must be alive for the difficult quest to be completed. He welcomes them and calls them plunderers who want to steal gold. The clear condition of this final stage is quite simple. All 4 party members need to give a respectful bow to the Conqueror and stand in very specific areas. He throws the 3 stooges onto the ground and uses force to untie their ropes. He then forces them to walk towards the spots that have been designated so they can properly bow. Thanks to his high level and his force stat, even though the distance between the areas where each player must bow is significantly high, Jihan is confident that he can do it. He successfully makes all the players stand in their appropriate places. He is then able to make them all bow to the ground. Once he is sure that they have all bowed appropriately, he joins them there on the ground, successfully completing the difficult quest. A large gate opens up for them to return to their world. But despite the fact that he has already cleared the quest, Jihan is not moving. He suddenly got a hidden quest from the system, which requires him to show genuine respect to the Conqueror's statue for a reward of 5,000 achievement points, as well as the legendary Conqueror's arrow. The arrow itself is so large that it is basically a spear, and if he can complete this new quest, then he will get that as a powerful reward too. But Jihan cannot figure out what the system means by genuine respect. To test the waters, Jihan drags one of the other players toward him and then tosses him up towards the Emperor as a show of his genuine respect. The golden horse that the Emperor is currently sitting on grabs the player and proceeds to chew him up, killing him in an instant. The Emperor takes a moment to consider what Jihan is doing. He then asks our MC, if the king of plunderers he is referring to is the conqueror himself. Jihan confirms that a conqueror is the very epitome of plundering, and he's just trying to show his own genuine respect. Then, he tells the giant statue that instead of all the gold in the room, what he truly desires is the arrow that is resting on the conqueror's powerful bow. To know the true value of that arrow and to plunder, it is the genuine respect that the system requires him to show. And that is the condition to clear this hidden quest. In an instant, the great statue shows a large, terrifying grin, then bursts out into a fit of insane laughter. It looks as though it is pleased by Jihan's unique show of respect, and it praises him highly for it. As a reward, it will grant Jihan the legendary treasure for having shown his true and genuine respect. Jihan knows where this is going and grabs the sword to prepare for it as the statue draws the powerful phoenix arrows back and takes aim directly towards Jihan. The air becomes unbearably hot as the conqueror draws back the flaming arrow, and the others can now barely breathe. They catch on fire from the deadly phoenix, flames filling the room, and even Jihan catches on fire as well. Things have gotten truly dangerous, and as it currently stands, he is not sure that he will be able to hold out until the very end. It doesn't matter if his useless teammates die, but the problem is that the moment that they are dead, their weapon, which he's been graciously borrowing, will vanish as well. Jihan needs to resolve this before that happens. The room gets so incredibly hot that even the gold begins to melt, and the conqueror has not even shot the arrow yet. One of the other players perishes from the overwhelming heat, leaving just Jihan and the one remaining warrior. The heat is overwhelming, and Jihan can feel it deep inside his body. At his current state, Jihan definitely cannot face that arrow head on. So, the only hope he has is to aim for the bow before he shoots the arrow. He uses another powerful skill that used to be part of the Nameless divine technique called the Ultra Speed Stab. Just before the conqueror has a chance to shoot the arrow, Jihan uses the stab to hurl the sword straight at the bow, snapping it cleanly in half, before the conqueror has a chance to shoot the deadly arrow, causing the phoenix arrow to fall harmlessly to the ground. At that very moment, the statue's wide grin disappears, and he asks Jihan for his name. He then stops referring to Jihan as a simple plunderer and refers to him as a noble warrior instead. He then passes the legendary arrow over to Jihan as a reward for showing his true and genuine respect. Just like he thought, the arrow is so large that it can be used as a spear. Then the statue tells Jihan that he looks forward to the day that they can meet on a more honorable battlefield. In the far future, the BattleNet has countless battlefields, so it is inevitable that they will meet once again. But until then, Jihan will gladly use this powerful new weapon to its fullest potential. As he admires the new spear, his viewers are more concerned about the incredible ability that he just used to break the bow. It was so fast that slow motion is not even enough to see what happened. That's because the Ultra Speed Stab is not just super fast. It is also a technique that precisely aims at a single point with a thin sword's tip. The fact that he was able to use it means that he is getting better at controlling the Nameless divine arts. The first time he drew out this amazing ability, it was unstable and consumed a lot of his overall strength. But now, the more he utilizes this skill, the more refined and stable it becomes. At this rate, he will be able to manifest the basic forms of martial arts, too. Now that he has successfully completed the hidden quest, he has also been acknowledged by the Conqueror and has been exempted from the difficult test on the 7th floor. Since he doesn't have to worry about the test on the 7th floor anymore, there is no reason to let a guy that stabbed him in the back make it to number 1. He walks over to the warrior, who is still just barely waking up after the intense heat that engulfed the room. Then Jihan uses his new spear to stab at the man, ending his life in an instant. The game ends, and Jihan returns to the school's rooftops, where it seems like everyone was watching his epic fight in the dungeon. The spear is easily the most impressive thing, and it is crazy that he got something so valuable from a bronze dungeon. He turns to Hyen and Gaeao, who are also intently watching the stream, and announces that he has gotten first place again. Just like he promised. That means that he has won the bet. And as his reward, Hyen must now show him her status window. Hyen flinches, and Jihan initially thinks that she wants to go back on her previous word. But she is more anxious about the giant spear that he is now holding right behind him. It is filled with such overwhelming power that Gaeao is almost forced to instinctively draw her own sword. After he finally puts the powerful spear away, she shows him her entire status window, just like she had promised. but she is still clearly embarrassed about showing it to him. Seeing it for himself confirms exactly what he had thought. She has the fostering gift, which allows her to help foster other players. Gaon watches unworriedly from the side, as Hyen seems to die from absolute embarrassment. She absolutely hates talking about her gift, and she was so upset that she spent so much money for such a garbage gift. She was so upset she began to wonder why she even went to the academy in the first place. And she ended up talking badly about the academy at any chance she got. But now, she has to reveal her fostering ability at the very same academy. Of all the places, Jihan, on the other hand, is not saying a single word, and Hyen looks up at him, only to catch him smiling warmly at her. She thinks that he must be laughing at her, but he clarifies that he is happy instead. He then pulls out his phone and asks for her phone number. Hyen reminds him that she was the one who lost the bet, but he tells her that he just wants to get her number. She then tells him that her number is on the business card that she had given him. His action was a cold, unspoken message. He had zero interest in her. Yet now, in a whiplash-inducing reversal, he was asking for her number. Hyen couldn't escape the infuriating feeling that he was playing games with her, a direct assault on her monumental pride. But swallowing her pride, she gave him her number anyway, even audaciously saving her contact name with a heart. She then turned and began to stride away, only to pivot back smugly, eager to witness his reaction to her bold move. Instead of being taken aback or even slightly shocked, Jihan just let out a light laugh and promised her that he would call. That was the final devastating blow to her ego. She desperately wanted to scream at him, but with immense effort, she restrained herself. Elsewhere within the academy, Seiya was watching her uncle's first dungeon conquest with her classmates, and they were all utterly captivated by just how powerful he was. Hizu, however, did not seem nearly as pleased as the others about Jihan's accomplishment. In fact, she appeared to be almost seething, but she was broken from her dark trance by one of her classmates, casually calling out her name. The girl asked Hizu if she also noticed how different Jihan now looked, compared to just a single month ago. The last time Hizu had visited Seiya's home, Jihan looked like some kind of unemployed, alcoholic deadbeat. And now he had transformed into this incredible person, who even had one of her other classmates swooning with pure glee. Seiya couldn't help but shed tears of absolute joy at the fact that her uncle had become someone so truly respectable and strong. Hizu then reminded Seiya that her 18th birthday was fast approaching, which also meant that the day she would officially awaken as a player was nearly here. Everyone awakens as a player when they turn 18, allowing them to finally see their own status windows. The other students also remembered that important fact, and the fact that she must be incredibly nervous about it. Battle.net Academy students eagerly await the fateful day that they can become players. After spending so much valuable time with various different classes and undergoing so much rigorous training, the gift room is the biggest reason for the Academy's very existence. And all of the students are also the most interested in the gifts. The other students begin to wonder if Seiya will receive a gift as well. And some of them already believe that it will be at least an S-rank gift. After all, her father possessed an SSS rank gift. Her mother was an SS rank and a legendary saintess. And there are already rumors that her uncle is at least an S rank. With all of those amazing talents in her family, there's no way she won't be just as powerful as they all are. Although, there's already been extensive research done that proves that genetics has absolutely nothing to do with gifts. Still, despite all of that, she still hopes that she will be blessed with something good. Her birthday is just a little over a single week away, so she's been incredibly anxious about it. But Hizu tries to be there to comfort her. She tells Seiya that she should look forward to a special gift that she will receive on her birthday. Meanwhile, in the Neo Self-Defense Force Training Hall in Japan, countless unconscious bodies are strewn behind the Sword King. As brutal proof of his intense training session, the onlookers can only wonder if the Sword King has always been this overwhelmingly powerful. However, it's been made abundantly clear through this training session that the Sword King has become even stronger than before, and all of his abilities are now much higher than they were before. Now that things have escalated to this level, everyone in the Neo Self-Defense Force is eagerly looking forward to the day when Ito Ryuhei will make his debut in the fight between Korea and Japan inside the Divergent Guild's headquarters. Hyen is having a very heated conversation with someone over the phone. She is talking to her father, who wants her to try and pursue a relationship with someone she dislikes. At all, they continue to argue, and her father, continues to try and encourage her to get married as soon as possible, and eventually, she gets so upset that she abruptly ends a call on it. Gaeon comes into the room to check on what is going on, and Hyen doesn't even try to hide the fact that she is upset. She left her home and her entire life behind her because her father kept trying to force her into marrying people that were far too old for her or completely unlikable. This time, he tried to force her to go on a date with an overweight, balding old man from the Neo Self-Defense Force. It was a really bad and highly uncomfortable situation, and this has been her life for as long as she has been in marriage. Despite the fact that she is incredibly rich, it does not stop her father from wanting her to marry someone wealthy. Gaeon suggests that Hyen should go and rest at her home, but she flatly declines, since she feels more comfortable in the Divergent Guild's headquarters. Then Hyen takes a moment to sincerely apologize to her bodyguard, seemingly out of nowhere. She knows that Gaon doesn't have much time to herself because she is working as a personal bodyguard, and with her S-rank gift, her talents would have been much more useful somewhere else. Gaon doesn't mind, though, and she assures Hyen that being a bodyguard is her solemn duty and something that she has willingly chosen to do. For now, she will just hold on until Hyen finally inherits the company, although the Divergent Guild's recruiter does not want to do so. Instead, she wants to become completely independent so she can earn her own money and live the kind of life she wants, without her parents constantly nagging her to get married. That would have been a noble cause, if not for the fact that Hyen's main way of earning her own money is through reckless gambling. It may be legal, but Hyen keeps losing on every single gamble, which makes it highly unlikely that she will make her own money this way. But this time, she is completely sure that she will be able to win something big. This time, that is because of the Korea versus Japan matchup that is coming up soon. It is a rather sad situation, but all of the Koreans are now betting on Japan win. People don't want to say it out loud, but everyone knows that Japan is going to win. Her phone suddenly vibrates in her hand with a new message from Jihan, and the contents of the message cause her eyes to go wide with shock. The next day, Jihan is making good on his promise to treat Diego to some good food. As thanks for his help during the chaotic defense mission, the two of them go to a very fancy restaurant, where Diego gets his first ever taste of Korean beef, and even he can tell that it must be very expensive. Jihan doesn't mind, though, and tells him to ask for anything else that he might want. He asks for a drink, and Jihan orders him some potent soju. In a split second, Diego mixes it all together perfectly, even better than Jihan would have been able to. He then takes a bite of the tender meat, and it's so incredibly good that Diego can barely even speak. Now that the two of them have gotten better acquainted, Jihan tells Diego to speak more casually and comfortably with him. The two of them chat and drink together. And as the day goes on, Diego finally confesses that he feels a bit resentful about the way his life has gone. If it were not for the BattleNet, then he would not be living this kind of pathetic life. He was a soccer star and one of the best in the entire world. But in the mere blink of an eye, he fell all the way to rock bottom because of it. He couldn't get any more to support himself, and his wife and children both left him. Jihan understands exactly what Diego is talking about. He was once a true world star, and he was someone who could have everything he ever wanted. But with the birth of the BattleNet, people began to lose interest in normal sports. And just like that, he also lost all of his adoring fans. Eventually, FIFA and the professional soccer scene would both disappear, as people forgot all about the sport of soccer. Nothing more needs to be said. A world-class player is forced to live in Korea, teaching little kids how to play soccer. Diego stops talking about himself then, and suggests that they get straight to the point. Jihan recently advised him to become a mage, and he wants to know why. It's because of the special gift that Diego possesses. It reinforces all equipment that resembles a common soccer ball, and it's an SSS rank gift as well. Because of this, Diego carries a soccer ball with him wherever he goes, but he doesn't know if he has what it takes to be a mage, since his mana stat is really quite bad. To show his sincerity, Jihan summons an item that he got specifically for Diego. It's an Arachne's orb, and it's a B-rank magical item from the powerful spider tribe. The orb is wrapped in a spider's web, making it incredibly elastic. And since spiders only have their feet, the orb is technically considered ball, therefore making it the perfect piece of equipment for Diego. This very item will bring out the real Diego, who was the most powerful mage to ever exist in Jihan's previous life. Diego nervously asks how much it costs, and Jihan tells him that it is about 50 million won. And the mention of the insane price tag immediately sobers up Diego. That's more expensive than the entire down payment on his house. Normally, Diego would not be able to purchase something like this, even after 10 whole years of saving up. Jihan is not yet finished, though, and he has even more to offer. He wants to give Diego this orb as a gift, and he even plans to support Diego financially as well. The former soccer star cannot believe what Jihan is saying, but our MC is not done yet. He wants Diego to join the powerful guild that he will create, where he finally reaches silver rank. Naturally, Diego wants to know if Jihan has enough money for that, and our MC is completely confident that he does, although he's also sure that he's about to make a lot more very soon. He then shows Diego his phone, and whatever is on it is enough to cause the soccer star to think that Jihan has officially lost his entire mind. It's the predictions of the match that will happen between Japan and Korea, and it predicts that Korea will have 1 win and 3 losses. He sent the very same information to Hyen, but she does not believe it. There is no way that Korea will be able to win against the Sword King. But his impossible prediction will be proven soon enough, because the time for the Korea versus Japan round has finally arrived. Diego cannot believe that Jihan thinks that Korea will get 1 single win. It is almost impossible for him to even imagine that happen. He is not looking down on the Korean team, but the Sword King is on a whole other level. He's someone so powerful that he can take on an entire team by himself. Jihan understands why that would be difficult to believe, but it is easier if he shows it than if he just explains it. Then Jihan picks up a remote and turns on a TV beside their table, showing the epic match happening live. The international competition is now set to begin, and the conditions to win is that one team must defeat all the players on the opponent's team. There will be 5 rounds. And the first team to get to 3 wins is the winner of the battle. Ryuhei immediately starts the charge and tells his new teammates to follow his lead. But the rest of them are quite hesitant. They do not want to follow his lead, and they do not acknowledge him as their teammate. It is not just because he is Korean, but also because they have had another member who has been their long-time, loyal teammate. That person had to be removed for the Sword King to participate in this major competition. Because of that, they do not want to follow along with Ryuhei's plans. As they are arguing, one of the Korean players starts it off with a powerful surprise attack, aimed directly at Ryuhei. The attack lands perfectly, surprising everyone on the Japanese national team, as well as even the entire Korean team. They see this as a golden opportunity and rush to push the attack before he can possibly recover. Their main goal is to take down the Sword King first, and then go for all the others later on. Ryuhei stops them in their paths with a simple swing of his sword, slashing the ground in front of them before they can make it to him. Then, as a brazen show of rebellion, he stabs himself directly in the chest, taking himself out of the first round of the entire competition. That gives the very first kill to the Korean team, shocking the entire massive crowd. It was officially recorded as the Korean team's kill, even though Ryuhei had taken himself out. Now, Jihan's impossible prediction is starting to make some sense. But the real question is how he even knew that this was going to happen. Jihan cannot reveal that, but he tells Diego to focus on the match for now. With Ryuhei now taken out, the Korean team has an easy time eliminating the remaining stunned Japanese players, giving the first unexpected win to Korea. The MVP role for the match goes to the support, who cast the very spell that originally hit the Sword King in the first place. And just like that, things have taken a completely unexpected and shocking turn. But they are exactly what Jihan had already predicted. Everything is going exactly the way it did in his past life, even down to the dividend rates of the betting application. Back in the team recovery area, the Japanese players confront Ryuhei for his unbelievably rash decision. He is their nation's representative, and he just casually killed himself simply to prove a point. Ryuhei is tired of their constant, incessant whining and calls them all a bunch of trash without any sense of professionalism. You can see now why they have lost to Korea every single time, and he's tired of being around it all. He doesn't care about their childish little friendships, and he calmly tells them that if they do not recognize him as their new leader, then he will kill himself in every single round until they finally do, with the choices laid out clearly before them. They have no other option left but to accept Ryuhei as their leader, if they have any hope of winning. The second round starts, and the Korean side is just as completely confused as last time. They do not understand why Ryuhei would kill himself out of nowhere. They initially wonder if he might be a spy or something, but they quickly see that that is certainly not the case. The Ryuhei on the battlefield now is clearly more than willing to fight this time. And he has a completely different atmosphere around him than the last time. The Korean team stays alert and prepares to defend themselves. But in the mere blink of an eye, Ryuhei has delivered an attack so powerful that it hits 3 of them, all with one single hit. The raw power of the attack shocks the players and the audience as they realize the overwhelming gap in power. He then follows up with yet another attack, immediately killing the last remaining player who somehow survived. His vicious assault, the Korean audience trembles in pure fear, while the Japanese audience screams in joy and chants Ryuhei's name. The Sword King defeated the entire South Korean team with just 2 attacks, and that completely equalizes the scores. As was expected with the Sword King's return, Japan easily takes the 3rd round as well, and the 4th round is not much different. The Korean team can barely show any real resistance against Ryuhei's completely overwhelming power, and it ended up being a completely one-sided defeat for Korea. By the 4th round, they try to put up a much harsher fight, putting everything they have into the desperate fight, but it is ultimately all pointless. Even with his hands firmly bound, he is still somehow able to move his sword with some other power and break his chains, defeating them one by one without missing a beat. It's only the archer and the mage who are left, and they both struggle to even hold their ground. But is no point, with their attention completely focused on Ryuhei. The other team is able to take down the archer with a cheap shot before he even notices. The other members of the Japanese team are still there, after all, and they can still put up a fight, however minuscule it might now be. With only the mage left, Ryuhei personally goes up to finish her off. He does this with a new ability that he seems to have called Sword Flight. The 2 players make some brief, small talk, and the mage does not let her inevitable loss stop her from taunting Ryuhei on his rash decision to leave behind Korea and show off in Japan. Ryuhei doesn't let her words get to him and tells her that she would have been able to survive for much longer if her fighting skills were at least half as good as her talking skills are. Not willing to go down without a proper fight, the mage activates a powerful spell that boosts her own power. But before she can even fully activate it, the Sword King decides to try out a brand new technique on her, bringing down a giant sword of light right over her head, which leaves nothing but a huge, smoking crater in the middle of the arena. The match is finally over, and as expected, it is an overwhelming victory for the team from Japan. It is a hard pill to swallow for the Korean team, but they're determined to come back even stronger no matter what. Diego was just shocked that Jihan predicted the outcome so precisely. He lies that he simply saw it in a dream. And now, that dream has helped him win a literal mountain of money. That's certainly perfect for him, but it does not ease his worry over the performance that he just witnessed from Ryuhei. The Sword King is much stronger than Jihan even remembers, and at this rate, our MC will not be able to defeat him. In fact, the nameless divine arts might not even be enough to go up against him. On top of that, he also has an SSS rank gift called the Twin Sword Peak, which makes him even more incredibly deadly. All of his stats may be completely against him, but Jihan does not care. He will make sure that no matter how strong the Sword King becomes, he will become even stronger than him. The 2 of them will eventually clash, and it will be a fight for the very ages. Someone else is a lot more excited about her payout from the bet than Jihan is, though. Hyen managed to make 200,000, one for just 5,000. She never imagined that this day would come, and it is all thanks to Jihan. Unfortunately, she ended up in about 20,000 in debt from the total earnings in the game. After she had followed Jihan's advice, Hyen was sure that South Korea would lose 0-3, and she bet more against them. She bet 200,000 on her surety that Korea would face an overwhelming defeat without a single victory, and that is how she ended up with a net loss. Back with Jihan and Diego. The next question is today's primary topic. The fact that Jihan wants to make a formal contract with a football star. Diego does not understand why Jihan suddenly wants to make a contract with him out of nowhere, because he does not see himself as being worth that much effort. But Jihan is sure that this contract will absolutely be worth it. He tells Diego that the very same foresight that he used to predict the outcome of the Korea-Japan match is the same thing that he is using to tell him that Diego will be a very valuable asset in the near future. Jihan is very confident in that single decision, and that is why he wants to bring Diego to his side, no matter the cost. Diego is set to become the world's strongest mage, and this contract is nothing more than a simple investment from Jihan. Diego has not had someone chase after him this much since his glorious days as a football star. He missed being a vital aspect of someone else's team. After the battle net was first created, he thought that he would never experience this feeling again. Now, Jihan has come out of nowhere to show him a new ray of hope. There is absolutely no reason for him to refuse such a generous offer. Diego happily gets up from his chair and stretches his hand across the table to shake hands with Jihan. He will never forget the immense kindness that Jihan has shown him today, and he is determined to pay him back 10,000 times over. Jihan smiles lightly and tells him that he is eagerly awaiting that very day. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Gaeong is facing her own battles in a gladiator match of her own. She is not as skilled as Jihan is, but she still easily takes out all of the competition and is known for constantly placing at the very top. In any mission she is placed in, people usually team up together to take her down because of this, but she's always able to send them all flying with relative ease. The game ends as she takes out the last two remaining threats and brings down the total player numbers. And once again, she is placed in first. Her final result of 5 kills is not bad at all, but she can't be satisfied with just this result anymore. She has to get stronger to be able to compare to the high-ranking Sword King, who showed overwhelming power during the Korea versus Japan match, and also to Jihan, who has grown into an undefeated legend. Gaeong started slacking off after she entered the Divergent Guild, and she has to do much better going forward. Seiya is facing very similar struggles on her end, and she reads an article about her own father's recent victory with a pained and conflicted look on her face. She tries to play it off, but Hizu can tell, just from the expression on her face, that Seiya is not in a good place right at this moment. The vice president offers to stay at Seiya's place for the day to help reassure her, but Seiya declines this generous offer. She's just happy that Hizu is willing to drive her home. Since her uncle was busy with his work and couldn't pick her up today, the driver even apologizes to her personally. Again, for making the mistake of challenging Jihan for no good reason the other day. Then Hizu brings up another sensitive topic that the two have talked about on a previous occasion and asks if Seiya has given it any more thought. The Sword King's daughter still seems very hesitant to agree to whatever they had discussed. Their conversation is cut short. However, when the car comes to a very sudden stop, Hizu angrily asks her driver why he has stopped so suddenly, but the reason is crowding right in front of the car. As they are speaking, they have arrived at the magnificent Sword Palace, and right in front of the building, there is a huge crowd of people seemingly waiting for her. Jihan has finished his meeting with Diego and now makes his way home. Across the many rooftops, he notices that he feels a lot lighter now, that his overall strength has increased. And he has also grown a lot as a direct result. He takes a moment to admire the spectacular view from the top of the building and sits across the very edge, watching the peaceful streets down below him. He used to relax on rooftops in the past, back when he lived in the United States. And this makes him feel somewhat nostalgic of the past. Now, he has gotten a first-person view of the kind of person Ryuhei was. In this particular era, in reality, he never got a chance to fight the Sword King himself in his past life, during the era where half of Earth's countries had simply disappeared, and he started becoming one of the high rankers. The Sword King, who had been the top-ranked warrior, suddenly disappears without ever leaving a single trace. Jihan still has no idea why he had vanished. He is definitely as strong as Jihan was at his own peak. Just because he is growing so quickly, it does not mean that Jihan can afford to take a single break. He has to grow and become even stronger than he was back then. To do that, he needs to achieve the full nameless divine arts as soon as he possibly can. Now that he's done with his resting, he continues on his journey home, where a startling new scene is now waiting for him. Hizu's driver tries to shift the people out of the way so that Seiya can pass, but there are just too many of them. These people are all reporters, and they're all here to try and get first-hand interviews with Seiya, despite the larger man's attempts to hold them all back. They all keep trying to push their way through to reach the car. They keep asking her intrusive questions about the Sword King's match today, and even dare to accuse her of antagonizing the Sword King with her prior public statements. They keep trying to approach the car like a pack of vultures, and the scene starts to get incredibly overwhelming for Seiya, who is still trying to process the entire horrible thing. Seiya covers her face as the reporters press their intrusive cameras to the car door, hoping to get just a single peek of her. Because of that, She does not notice the subtle, smug smirk on her friend's face as she pretends to comfort the now distressed girl. Behind them, an angry voice calmly calls out to them all as Jihan now approaches. He then uses force to push all of the reporters away and create a comfortable space for himself to reach the car. The reporters are still completely relentless, and they accuse Jihan of laying his hands on innocent reporters who are just trying to do their jobs. They even accuse him of not caring about his own public opinion. On the contrary, though, he really does care about his public image. That is the very reason why he is treating them so kindly, despite how truly angry he really is. The enraged look on his face is more than enough to shut the reporters up and force them all to look away. And he reminds them that they should all be grateful. That thing's ended right here. Then he reaches the car, where Seiya is still covering her face in pure distress, and kindly tells her that they should now go home. As the two of them finally leave the car, Jihan takes a brief moment to thank the driver for trying to protect her. He then walks away from the car, as Hizu wishes the two of them a fond goodbye. Once they are far enough away from earshot, Hizu bursts into a fit of laughter that she almost could not hold back during the entire ordeal. The other reporters take notice of her as she laughs. She is the powerful daughter of the owner of South Korea's #1 media outlet. It is sad that Seiya has to go through all of this, and Hizu just smiles as she silently reminds the girl that it is all over for her. Meanwhile, Ryuhei goes on public television once again, proclaiming that he does not have a daughter. He has abandoned his past and come to Japan, and he says that if he has something that can be called a daughter, then she is absolutely nothing to him. Now, that's the big interview that caused this entire huge fuss, and Jihan can barely hold back his immense anger at how his former brother-in-law is acting toward his only child. Despite his burning anger, though, he is more worried about Seiya. His beloved niece had just finally started to brighten up, and this came out of nowhere to ruin all of their precious progress. Her expression has darkened once again, and he can't help but feel absolutely terrible that things are reaching this point. Suddenly, though, Seiya calls out to him and asks if he remembers the promise he made, to listen to any single request of hers. That promise was made when she decided that she would help him find the Shadow Queen. She thinks it is finally time that he fulfills that solemn promise, because she thinks that she has finally found the shadow. After lots of searching, Jihan's eyes go wide as Seiya pulls out her phone and shows him a video that she has found, which reveals the Shadow Queen's true identity. Oh, it is true, and that's all that we have time for. Jihan has a lot on his plate to deal with going forward, but it seems like Seiya is strong enough to not just handle herself, but to also help him out. How is the discovery of the Shadow Queen going to change the entire course of the story?